There you go. Should be going up.
Well, I've got stuff coming through to
That sounds fantastic.
I've
got stuff going through to it's all right.
It's all right. Yeah,
might be going live. Yeah, it's okay. Whatever.
Yeah,
I'm not bothered. It's the thing. It might be happening.
Oh, it's having a moment.
Don't say that. Technical difficulties. I already just hit the button.
No, Twitch is fine. Tis fine.
Tis fine. Tis but a scratch.
Tis but a scratch.
Tis but a buffer an issue.
Yeah. So, right, try again. Good evening, everybody on the Suffolk Round.
Skazz.
Welcome to episode 170 of the Rand Nerds podcast.
Sure, it's 170.
I'm positive.
You do know at the end of this episode, I'm going to go, Ram, what episode is it?
Yeah, and then I'll go, oh shit, I got that number wrong again.
And then there'll be another edit, and you'll be like, oh mate, I meant to say.
Problem is, I ran out of fingers and toes to count on about 150 episodes ago.
And now it gets awkward then, doesn't it?
It's really hard.
You're starting to wonder if you're just making numbers up now, aren't you?
Yeah, it's awkward, isn't it? So, I did at one point consider switching over to binary because it's base 2. It's a bit easier to keep track of.
Maybe.
But I think that might confuse our listenership.
I was going
to... I said readership there, but...
readership, damn.
Yeah.
Well, we're going backwards. Look, it's not video anymore. It's not audio anymore. Sod it. That's too high tech. We're not even going to print it. We're just here's some stone. It's blank, because we ain't chiseling that in advance for you. So just make something up. Pretend you've read the podcast. Yes.
We're gonna start releasing Rand Nerds on vinyl.
That would be fantastic.
And a wax cylinder.
Fantastic and expensive and
eventually. Those old school moose boxes that used to sort of tring the little pins to make noises. We're going to have a version of that. You'll have to have a lot of pins to cover the show to make sense of what we're saying. So you have to have quite a few thousand.
Whoever said that? Like, why can't we just say that a tone represents just like speech? A tone will represent a feeling, and we can just go, look. There's the high pitched one. That means that Ram is excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's the low one. They're disappointing.
Yeah. What we're saying is there'll be an orchestral version of Rand Nerds at some point.
Oh man, I would love that. Can we do that? Can we go Can we get like a symphony orchestra to give us a nice backing track? Can I have a go with the stick and wave it in front of people and see what it does?
Yeah, it doesn't go well. No, it's April who can make music happen, can't he? So perhaps he can sort of tend to be an orchestra.
Just say, Zay, but do you know how to operate a stick? Can you be a conductor? And I'm not talking like train styley here. Can you do the thing where you wiggle the thingy and people go and make the music faster?
Yeah.
Sorry, just say I'm wiggling the thing and then going that's a bit.
That's how they all do it. You see the conductor going.
It's like, I don't know how this works. I don't even know what I'm doing. It's like pointing at someone, like jabbing it at me. You're a fucking wanker.
You play faster. Play faster. You play slower. No, you faster. You slow. Wait, you sort of in between him and him.
Why do you not understand what I'm waving this stick at you for?
Yeah. So, Skazz, what have we been up to?
I have been dying greatly.
Yeah. Sounds great. You right?
Okay. I have just been told that my dog is going out on an adventure for reasons. What were we talking about again? So my brain's already turned off.
Oh dear. Well, it's in the last few weeks.
Yes.
The last couple of weeks. Cyberpunk 2077 had its. I don't think it's going to be its final patch, but one of its
bloody well hope not.
One of its big milestone patches to sort of fix it. So you requested that we go back because I sort of played Cyberpunk about sort of January time. I said no, I want to walk away from this. They've had time to actually fix most of it.
Yeah.
And you suggested we go back and try it out.
Well, it's
which is
because
what we've both been doing.
it's because they said that this was going to be the patch that was kind of like going to sort out a lot of stuff for console players. Well, I mean, the groove is it was never going to fix the game for last gen consoles. I'm sorry, it's not. They're not. It's not next gen consoles and current. They are the previous gen consoles. Even though not many people have the current gen, the PS4 is most definitely last gen. I don't think this is an issue of saturation to decide whether or not it's next gen or not. But PS4 and Xbox One are definitely last gen. I don't think they were ever going to be able to patch that game to get it to work on those systems. Because that's the thing that's really plagued Cyberpunk. That they were stupidly released on what are now last gen consoles, and the fan base went completely mental that the second coming of gaming didn't work on ancient hardware to start with. Yet was realistically supposed to be a technical masterpiece. It was supposed to be like, you know, the next kind of counterplay Crisis kind of thing, you know, like it was going to have all the latest technologies and all that kind of stuff. And did we not say that we thought that perhaps they had worked on PC and then just decided to go backwards? They aimed to make the best looking game possible for PC and then go backwards.
I think that was our theory. We discussed it off podcast at one point. I think that was our theory.
Well, they confirmed it.
Yeah,
pretty much that they were aiming to make it the best game possible for the highest end hardware they could for PC, and then would scale it back for console. And that shamefully they just couldn't do it it just wasn't a thing. And their management decided to push it out. It's no fault of the people actually writing the code and doing the graphics and all that kind of stuff. They just couldn't do it. We wanted the game out by Christmas. We released it. It wasn't finished. Sorry. And that realistically, when the fan base said that CD Projekt Red lied because they announced it when the Xbox, or before the Xbox and PlayStation 4 came out, I mean, that doesn't really mean anything.
No.
Because games change engines all the time. I mean, do you really want them to focus on PS4 and Xbox One hardware and then ignore all of the technical advancements that we have? Do you want them to release a technical masterpiece knowing full well that PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series was coming out, which would make them closer to middle of the road, middle high-end PCs? Yeah. Let them make a technical masterpiece, and that's kind of what they went for. They didn't lie to you. They just wanted to make a big game.
They tried to please everybody. They damned themselves by, as you say, if they had said, right, we're going to make this game, it's going to be released on PC first, and then we will then port it to consoles afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Then they then say, right, okay, we'll get away for PC. We'll secretly be developing it for PlayStation 5, Xbox, I lost track, whatever the new Xbox is called. Mm-hmm. Is it Xbox S or something?
The Xbox, just call it Series. Just call it the Xbox Series.
Yeah. They said, they basically gone and said, right, we'll develop for those. Won't tell anybody we'll develop it for those, but we'll develop it. Say it's PC, then as soon as those consoles get announced, we go, oh yeah, we'll be releasing it on those consoles.
Sure.
And I also think Cyberpunk was very much a victim of its own hype.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Although CD Projekt Red did probably fan it a little bit, it was basically the fan base. I mean, I didn't buy into the hype. I knew it was coming out.
Yeah.
I knew it was made by people who made The Witcher. I knew Witcher 3 was a very highly regarded game.
Except it was janky as balls when it came out.
Yeah. Well, there's form there, then, isn't there? So I knew I wasn't sort of like, I was like interested. It's like, oh, I know about it, but I wasn't that bothered. But yeah, everybody was, as soon as there was like a new video, everybody was like, this is going to be amazing. It's going to be the best game ever. And basically, no matter what they released, it was never going to be good enough.
No chance. People were seeing it as the second coming of gaming,
and that basically becomes its own fault. Going backhand fault, because as soon as it comes out, isn't the second coming of gaming. Everybody thinks it's shit. It's terrible. It's rubbish. It's horrible. Blah blah blah. It's terrible. It's like 2 out of 10. Crap game. Blah 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 blah. They were basically screwed before they even released the game.
Oh, I agree. Well, that's like the same thing with Duke Nukem Forever. that was doomed to fail because it had been in development for 10 years, even though realistically it only had 2 years of actual dev work. There was no way they could release that and have it come out as good. Cyberpunk, again, victim of its own hype, and a reason why you will never see a Half-Life 3.
I think this is how I think they'll do it. If I was Valve, this is what I would do.
Mm.
Don't tell anybody you're making it. Just don't tell people. You make it, and then you just release it into the wild. Don't allow the hype train to build.
No, I wouldn't do it. But don't let the hype train build. Half-Life 3, people have been cute. It's a meme.
It's a meme, but at the moment, there's no shots released. There's no thing. People, it's a meme in the sense that it's never coming out, right? So that hype train is not really there. It's people going about, we're going. Not like Cyber, not like you're getting a new shot out. So
no, that's fair. But the point is, like, do you honestly think that they would release a Half-Life game now, main series Half-Life game now, and people go, that's actually really good. That was well worth the wait. I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't think that game could cure cancer, and I don't think people would give it half the credit it deserves. It could be a technical masterpiece, but as soon as it doesn't, because it's been so long since Half-Life 2.
I don't think it would suffer as bad as Cyberpunk. It will suffer a bit, but I do not think it would suffer as bad as Cyberpunk has suffered. And same with your Duke Nukem, I wouldn't think it would suffer as bad as that.
Mm-hmm. No, sure.
Because it has been so long now, and saw no word about it being developed and so forth. I think if you just literally just released it, and that's what I would do. I would just literally say, "Hey, by the way, Half-Life 3 is now released and is being released tomorrow."
Sure.
I think you wouldn't get rid of it because you say people have it. You won't, but you won't. You've cut off a lot of the build. People aren't really built up to it like they were. They've sort of like almost given up on it. So you ain't got that sort of it's going to come out. You eliminate all that.
Yeah, I just don't think I could live up to the previous games at this point. That's what I'm saying. Like right now, people. I mean, even you yourself will say that Half-Life 2 is a great game. I don't think it could live up to that nostalgia. So I personally, Valve, Gabe, seriously, don't. Just don't. Don't waste your time, mate. It's not worth it. Might get you a lot of money to start with. It's not worth it.
Yeah. No. But yeah, so it was definitely a victim of its own hype, and I think it's actually been unfairly treated.
Yes.
Somewhat because of it. Because people seem to think they're going to get a game released and it's going to be spot on perfect. No open world game is spot on perfect the day it's released.
Ever. Look, well, I don't think I can actually think of a single one ever in history, even after years, that actually runs perfectly.
But you mentioned The Witcher 3. Witcher 3 was very janky when it was released. You said so earlier.
No, but what I'm saying is it's still pretty janky.
Yeah.
It works, but it ain't perfect.
No, they fix a lot of the big stuff.
Sure. Same with my brain's gone now. Bethesda. They haven't been able to patch out Skyrim bugs from vanilla yet.
No, they're still releasing it. They're still releasing new versions of it.
Exactly. So I don't think an open world game will ever be bug free.
You can't account for all the edge cases. There's just too many of them.
Exactly.
You can't account for all the logic and so forth. Unless you literally make it 1% realistically represent the real world.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot account for everything because all game development is a series of compromises. It's a series of cheats. Yeah. Okay, so it feels like it should. I mean, even like when you're fighting an enemy, computer enemies can shoot you no problem at all if you don't rein in the AI. They're perfect. They are 1% perfect. They're faster, you quicker, and so forth. So you have to rein the AI. You have to make the computer bad.
Yeah, because the AI knows where you are as soon as you spawn into a map.
Yeah,
and like the computer already knows where you are, so it can just run straight at you.
And if you cheat it so the AI doesn't know where you are, so it has to actually spot you and so forth, it can move itself instantly. It doesn't have to wait to move a mouse, and it doesn't have to process it. It can process that information a lot quicker than a human can.
Yeah.
So that's why A-bots are a thing.
Yeah.
That's why A-bots exist. So you have to cheat, and all game engines and all game development are a series of cheats to make it feel right, to make it look right. And when you do that, you get lots of little edge cases, lots of little things, and people call them bugs, but half it's just the way that the game's designed. And there's also definitely a case of, is it worth fixing? Okay, so there's an issue of Skyrim where I don't. This is just made up. There's an issue where, if you put a box at a slightly funny angle on top of this thing in a certain location in the world, the game crashes. Is that really worth digging through your code, trying to find out why it happens, and potentially breaking something else? No, is the answer.
It's I mean, there were bugs like that in WoW for a long old time as well. You could clip through walls into areas that were hidden off map. Think about all the console games that have wall glitches and where you can break physics. It's just a thing. You can't account for every action a player can possibly take.
Yeah,
because they're always going to try and approach things in a way that you never planned for them to try.
Another thing stacked against CD Projekt Red was they are predominantly third-person development. Their games, and third-person games fundamentally work very differently from how you develop them and so forth. They work very differently. So to go to a predominantly first-person game when you've always done third-person, you're going to have trouble because you don't actually know. You're going to have to basically learn how to make it work, and then you start to do a massive open world game. It was very ambitious to do.
Yeah.
I do have a certain degree of sympathy for, and I do think that playing it, it's still got problems, but no really worse than Skyrim has.
Oh no, I agree. I mean, I've played a fair few games recently, big open world things, and I'm like, people criticize Cyberpunk for buggy physics, the AIs being thick as posts, and then I look at other games like Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs, and the NPCs and that in those are equally as thick. But no one comes down on those games as hard as they did Cyberpunk.
And the other reason why that is because they've been releasing those games for so many years. People are like, oh, yeah, he does it. But that's been doing that since like 4 games ago. So
they expect
they expect it. Same reason Bethesda gets away with all their buggy gate. But the people sort of expect it.
It's a meme, isn't it? Like Bethesda releasing a finished game? Really? Never.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think actually, if people played the Bethesda game when it first when Elder Scrolls 6 eventually arrives, when people play on day one, if it's not full of bugs, people will be disappointed.
Yeah, pretty much. How many fun different ways can we break this game? I mean, that was one of the best things about Morrowind. There was a soul trap bug where you could buff all of your stats right at the start of the game. And you could jump into space pretty much. You could punch fully armored guards, and they would die. You could hit someone so hard the game would crash. It was great.
Yeah, that always exists, and no matter how careful you are, it's just that one line of code that you forget to put that little bit of little overload protection in, a little checker, a little if statement to check this. One line of code you forget to do that in, and you create a bug that occasionally occurs.
Yep.
And trying to reproduce it is a nightmare. And because people say, "Oh, I've got this bug where I open the door and I go flying." Right, great, that's brilliant. There's a bug. It needs to be sorted, but good luck trying to figure out. You need to figure out why that happens in the first place. What sequence of code and calculations has caused that to happen?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very hard thing to do. It is. I mean, and I don't know how big Cyberpunk Project Red, how big they are compared to like so say Bethesda, Rockstar.
I don't think they're big at all, are they? They're only a
rinky-dink
little
studio.
group.
Yeah, it's simply not enough manpower to do it. It simply isn't. So
could I just quickly throw out there that we are not trying to apologise on behalf of CD Projekt Red at this point.
No, we're trying to be realistic about it.
Yes,
we're trying to say that they were, in my opinion, they were unfairly crucified for something that's fairly common.
Yeah,
and they were seen as like sort of going to be the best sort of developers out there, and make the greatest game that's never going to have any problems. And when actually it came out, it turns out they are actually human.
No,
I know. Shock horror. They're not some sort of deity. They are actually stuff by human people. when it comes out and it's not as good as people expect, they were very unfairly criticised. Now, as we said earlier, the fact they released on old gen consoles was a big mistake.
Yeah.
They should never have done it.
And it was not a lie when just because they announced they were going to make a game before those consoles came out, no guarantee it was going to actually come to those consoles. Even if they announced that it will come out for next generation consoles, those consoles might come out and they go, "Oh crap, what the hell have we done?"
Yeah.
You know,
that was probably their big thing. If they had come out like a year ago, or 18 months ago now, and said, "Right, we've made this game. It's where it is. We simply cannot get it to work on these consoles. We simply can't.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to basically say cease development on them and concentrate on next gen consoles.
Yes.
If you've got a pre-order, you can either transfer over to next gen or cancel it."
Mm-hmm.
They would have backlash for it, but they would have saved themselves. They did somewhat paint themselves into a corner, and I don't think they managed that very well initially. They should have said early on that this won't work. And if they'd done that, people backlash, but I think overall people go, well, they couldn't do it. So
we respect that.
Yeah. Some people will be still pissed off.
Yeah.
But at least
not as bad as the people that spent the 60 quid, got a game, put it in their console, and got it to run at 20 frames a second, and everything fell apart.
And frankly, that's not fair. That's not on. That is not on that they had that experience in any way, shape, or form.
Now, it should be said that if you play the code base from the Xbox One on the Xbox Series, or if you play the PS4 code base on the PlayStation 5 through raw horsepower alone, those games are playable. That should be a show that it's not the code necessarily that's at fault. It's just it's overambitious for the hardware of the last generation.
Or it's not optimized in certain areas, but I'm sure it's a very optimized bit of code underneath that.
Well, I'm gonna tell you this now, right? So you and I have played it on PC, and I'm gonna tell you now, I ain't getting a solid 60 on it. Not all the time. And my PC curb stomps a PlayStation 4. My gaming laptop, my old gaming laptop, curb stomps a PlayStation 4. It can't play Cyberpunk.
I mean, I was getting pretty decent FPS. I was streaming though today, and I streamed today that really hit it badly.
So
that's not fair. It didn't hit that badly, but it dropped down to about 30.
And I'd like to throw out there that that's what would happen if I were to run it on my current gaming laptop and streamed it at the same time. But also, again, understand that that's still way more powerful than a fucking PlayStation 4.
And 30 FPS is playable.
Yes.
It is. I mean, I know everybody says 60 FPS looks nicer, but 30 FPS is perfectly playable.
Your mouse is a little bit wobbly at times, but other than that, it's all right.
I don't find too much trouble with it. I mean, I was getting plenty of headshots.
Although it does, I do believe it has a bit of an aim assist on it too, so...
Possibly. Well, I've got a smart gun, so that
there you go. That helps.
I've got a smart that literally has got aim assist built in as a function. But, if you've got the right upgrade.
You know, and I should just because I only want to bring up the consoles because we were saying about the through raw horsepower it'll work, but I also have to add in that even on Series and PlayStation 5, you still don't get rock solid frame rates.
No.
You don't. You just don't. Like, sometimes they'll drop down to... And this, you got to remember, last generation code on current generation consoles, so it's not even been patched and optimized for the new consoles. You're still, through raw horsepower, dropping down to about 50, 55 frames a second at times. So,
yeah.
they're not going to get it. Like, if you get 30 FPS on Cyberpunk on a PlayStation 4 or whatever, and they can get that reliable, you're asking a lot. Because there's a lot going on in that game. There's a lot going on in that game.
It is. As you said earlier, it's basically the new Crisis. It's it's going to be like 5 years down the line, hardware will be powerful enough to play it, no problem.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be like.
I mean, I've seen the game running at 4K with ray tracing and all the bells and whistles, and at just the right moments when you're looking at the city, in all the neons flashing around, looks absolutely fantastic. And to imagine that was going to scale down to a PS4. A PS4, by the way, that was weaker in raw horsepower than a PC I built back in 2011. It's just not going to happen. It was old hardware. It was old hardware long beforehand. This is not a case of they managed to release a game that was like, you know how at the end of a console generation we tend to get the very pretty looking games, the things that have been super well up. It just wasn't going to be that. It just wasn't going to be that. If you look at, say, some of the Kojima stuff that came out, like Death Stranding came out on the PlayStation 4, and the new God of War came out on PlayStation 4, those are nothing in comparison to the scope of what is going on in Cyberpunk 2077. When you look at the sheer amount of stuff going on in those games versus CP, I mean, what's Death Stranding? A fucking huge open empty space. What's God of War? Some very enclosed arenas that you wail on enemies on. There's nothing going on.
No. You've got dozens of pedestrians, you've got vehicles, you've got so much. There is so much that's going on. I mean, I was playing today and I was just saying back and I could see just like in the distance vehicles and stuff flying about the city. Admittedly, they're probably pre-scripted, very scripted routines and stuff, but it just looked, even on, because I've not got very, by comparison, my hardware's not that new. This PC was built 2016.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not, it's had, apart from RAM, it's had no upgrades done to it.
Yeah.
New hard drive. But actual, like, raw power, it's still running off, I'm still running on 1070 in it, I think, he said.
Check it. Check it.
I think it's a 10, I'm going to say it's a 1070 Ti,
No,
I think.
check it, because people are going to go mental if you don't check it. Check it. You can't say that and not know what graphics card you got. Check it.
I'm not. Yeah.
Check it.
What sort of piece of game?
Check it.
Card off the top of his head? I'm checking it. Just bear with me.
Now.
Just bear with me. He said, "Come on, you can help me out with this."
Right, press the Windows key and the X key at the same time, and then go to system, mate. Come on.
Look, I'm sorry. Look.
How could you not know what graphics card you got?
It's been a long day. Well, there you go. GeForce GTX 1070. So there.
Which, let's be fair, is actually still a pretty decent graphics card.
Yeah, well, I said it's running. I was also, bear in mind, I was running it today in ultra wide on ultra settings.
Yeah.
I was streaming it.
Yeah.
I had a second monitor running as well.
Yeah.
Which had the so I'm monitoring the stream on the second monitor.
Yeah.
I was still getting not quite. It was dipping around. It wasn't quite hitting at 30 FPS. It was around about sort of like 25 to 28 to 30 FPS.
25 to 30 I saw. And realistically, I think that's largely just because you had the stream set to using your processor rather than the graphics card for rendering. I
can't remember what it's set to. I didn't actually look it up then. I think it's set to grab, but I haven't actually looked.
Oh, fair enough. Well, we'll assume it was processor, but still, the point being, the consoles are the last gen consoles. Even the Pro versions are underpowered trash compared to even old PCs, and frankly, the fact they got the game to run at all is pretty impressive. And the fact that developers have gotten anything to run on those consoles as well as they have over these last few years is mental. Congratulations to every developer that has managed to get a game running at 30 to 60 and actually look somewhat decent on those systems, because they are weak.
Now, what I'm interested in talking about systems is, because you told me the other day, you've now played Cyberpunk on several different systems, haven't you now?
Yes.
So I'm interested to see what your experiences are on the different systems you've played it on.
Okay. So, I have the PlayStation 4 version I have the Xbox One version. I have the Google Stadia version. And I have the PC version. That's all of them, right?
You played it on GeForce Now as well,
Yes,
didn't you?
well, but that's still the Steam version.
It is, but it's using a offsite hardware, isn't it, to do
Yes.
the rendering, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's sort of a different system in a way.
So anything running off of the PC code base, good. My experiences have been generally pretty solid. I mean, other than launch day bugs, it's been pretty good. The PC version on Steam, reasonable frame rates, although my PC isn't capable of ray tracing and stuff like that. I was able to play Ultra, day one, near solid 60. Not perfect, but near solid 60. Right? And that was even when my PC was wobbly as fluff.
Yeah.
Right? On Stadia, that was actually probably one of the better experiences I've had on Cyberpunk. From dot one, that game ran pretty well on Stadia. Was it buggy? Every version of Cyberpunk was buggy when it came out, but you didn't need, you didn't need anything to play Cyberpunk on Stadia. You could have played it on a Chromebook, you could have played it on your telly.
Yeah.
You could have played it on a big old beefy gaming PC. It didn't matter because you were running it in a browser. But it ran really, really well for what it was. That was really the version I think people should have played if they didn't have decent gaming PCs to start with.
Yeah.
Skip the console version entirely. I mean, Google even had a deal, which I mentioned on the podcast back in the day, where you could buy Cyberpunk for about £30 on the Stadia store and get a Stadia control pad and Chromecast Ultra, a combo which is worth between £100 and £150, I think, for 30. For less than what you would pay for the game at retail,
Yeah.
you were getting all that extra stuff, and it worked really well.
Yeah.
I mean, I bought Cyberpunk on Stadia just to get that extra stuff.
Yeah. Fantastic deal.
So, and it worked. The console versions. Okay, so I only recently bust them out of the plastic. I mean, I got the next-gen consoles, and frankly, I didn't want to play Cyberpunk at all. I made my point in the last podcast that I am not into games, realistically, like Fallout and Skyrim. I'm just tired of them. And Cyberpunk was Skyrim and Fallout with a cyberpunk coat of paint, with a neon coat of paint.
Very much in that mold.
And I love Cyberpunk. I mean, okay, it's just to prove a point here. I have William Gibson's Neuromancer sat on my desk. I like the Netrunner card game, the tabletop game, and Cyberpunk's cool. Like, I've been playing Cyberpunk games since the Super Nintendo and the Amiga. Love me some Cyberpunk. And, Sega, although I will be honest, the Sega CD stuff, which would have been Hideo Kojima's Snatcher, wasn't a huge fan of it. Blade Runner's alright. It's a pretty decent genre. My house looks like an 80s hacker film or an 80s sci-fi film. Monitors everywhere.
That's very true.
There's the only room in my house that doesn't have at least a screen in it is the toilet.
That's only because they ain't got a plug socket in there.
Exactly. I have looked into maybe a battery-powered screen, but we're not going to worry about that.
That's why it takes a Switch with them.
Yes, pretty much. Or a device that we might be talking about later. But it's the Stadia version was solid. The GeForce Now version was also pretty good. Not as good as the Stadia version, but if you wanted to see what Cyberpunk could really look like, you could buy the game pretty cheap because of how badly people shat on it on consoles. The PC version went down in price very quickly. You could, say, get a GeForce Now subscription for, what was it, like 20 quid a year? Something like that. 15, 20, 25 pound a year, something like that. You could have gone Cyberpunk, Ultra, 60 FPS, ray tracing, as the game was intended, and your mind would have been blown. Delay would have been a bit off. There'd have been some bugs here and there, but still, you'd have had a really, really good experience playing it on GeForce Now. The streaming services back on launch were the best ways to play unless you had a monster of a PC. Then you get to the consoles. The PlayStation 4, no. Just wasn't going to happen. In fact, Sony pulled Cyberpunk from the PlayStation Network store. They just weren't.
Know that.
They were not going to have it. I think it was around Christmas. They said, nope, this game does not run on our base hardware. Get it fucking gone until you can fix it. You should not have released it. But then, like I said to people, it's back. It's back now. But, I mean, it was only recent that it came back, like within a few months ago. It was, well, basically, I think since that patch. Since the Big Boy patch just come out. It's been gone for a good year off the store. And then Microsoft followed suit and said, no, we're not going to have it on the Xbox store. It's gone because it just doesn't run. You could still buy the physical versions and you could buy them really cheaply, but you just couldn't get it digitally. Because if you tried to play the games on the base consoles, you'd get 20 FPS, sometimes dips down to 15. Textures wouldn't render in properly because the assets weren't streaming in properly. Enemies were thick as posts. The game would run at like 900p and lower most of the time. Cars would just disappear. AI just didn't work because the processor just couldn't keep up. It was a complete disaster. Now, you can kind of play them on those consoles, but it's really not recommended. Really not recommended. Sony tell you on the store, do not play Cyberpunk 2077 on anything less than a PlayStation 4 Pro. Not the Slim, not the original, just the Pro or the PlayStation 5. Nothing else.
I'm surprised actually that the store doesn't filter that automatically.
No.
That's weird, because it must know what hardware you're using to access the store.
I don't really think they give a shit, to be honest with you. It's if you want to buy it and play it on PlayStation 4, that's up to you. And I know a few people who did play it on Xbox and PlayStation 4, and they said, yeah, it's buggy as fuck, but it's still funny. You know, it's not perfect, but I'm still playing the game, even though it does chug. But I know some people who had loads of fun with it. And fact is, there are a lot of people on PC who just didn't have the hardware to run it either. But still, you know, look, my gaming laptop would not have been able to play Cyberpunk at all.
But case in point, 5-year-old hardware played it.
Yeah.
You know, case in point, it wasn't that outrageous.
No.
To play it on PC hardware. If you had a decent PC a few years ago, it's gonna play it.
Yeah.
It's not that outrageous. It's not like it's not a crisis level game, which was like brand new PCs were broken by it.
Yeah.
It's not that level.
Well, it is if you turned on ray tracing, but.
Well, yeah, but then you have to have a card that supports ray tracing. So.
Sure.
Which I don't.
Sadly, I've played it with ray tracing twice now, and
I have played it with ray tracing. I played it on GeForce Now, but that only supports normal widescreen. I've got an ultra wide monitor.
So it doesn't fit properly.
Yeah.
Well, my gaming laptop, the current gaming laptop, has a mobile 3060 in it, so it's not a very powerful graphics card, but it does allow for ray tracing.
How powerful was my graphics card? I'd imagine.
No.
Really?
It's lower end than your graphics card.
Really, you surprised me.
Well, you got to think that was a mobile graphics card, so it doesn't compare to the desktop in any way, shape, or form. It'll have the same model number, but it won't compete clock speed or core for core. Like, it just won't do it. It just can't. I mean, there's not enough power. There's not enough power, so it couldn't do it. I mean, it would probably compare to a desktop 1060, maybe, with ray tracing cores on it. But if you were to turn on DLSS, the NVIDIA smart upscaling thing that they have, which, let's be fair, even if you're running on a pretty beastly PC with a modern graphics card on it, if you turn on ray tracing on Ultra, you're still probably going to need to use DLSS. I mean, if I turn DLSS on that laptop, and I let it'll then like take the game and it'll go, oh, I'm gonna play the game at like 720p and then upscale it to 1080 or whatever. I can play on ray tracing at like 50 FPS, 55 FPS, and it looks quite nice. I mean, it looks fine. I can run around and the lights all look pretty. The lighting really changes, not every scene, but like anything inside, like nightclubs and going through Arasaka Tower and all that kind of stuff, looks gorgeous with ray tracing. Night City at night time looks gorgeous with ray tracing on.
I can imagine. I was going to say it must be nighttime. Reflections and lights in low light level areas is where ray tracing shines.
Yeah, but in just regular ass in the city looks not great. I mean, you could just turn it off and not really notice a huge amount of difference. But
no,
as I say, even with a beefy PC with ray tracing on, you'll have trouble with it. So it is crisis of now if you turn on all of the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
But as we say, you need to have a graphics card that supports it, relatively modern hardware, not as bad as Crysis for sure, because that was raw compute, but rather than like fancy card specific features or whatever. But yeah, anyway, so they recommend you don't play it on previous gen consoles at all. Confirmed. The code base, though, from those consoles, as I said earlier, when you run them on the Series and the 5, it runs fine. Are there still massive graphics compromises? Yes. Because there's the PlayStation 5 is running the PS4 version. There's no, like, when we play on PC on Ultra and there's like, the streets are full of people and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
None of that on PlayStation 5.
Oh, really?
Well, because, as I say, it's literally just raw horsepower for the PlayStation 4 version. PS4 ain't going to be able to render all those people in. No way. No. But, even though it is only running the PlayStation 4 code, it still can't keep it at 60. It looks a lot better. Like, I mean, it's smooth. It runs at 60 FPS rather than the console's 30. It's running at a relatively high resolution, but you can tell that ain't Ultra. You can tell it's nowhere near Ultra. But it's good enough. When you're rocking around Night City, it looks good enough. I'm curious what they're going to do to patch it up for the PlayStation 5, because if you can't run the PS4 code, what realistically can you change? What features can you turn up? They're going to say, well, it's running under a compatibility layer to run it on the... Maybe... but I mean, clearly it knows that it's running on more powerful hardware because the frame rate's over 30. So, Xbox One is an interesting beastie. So if you play on the Xbox Series S, which is the lower end Xbox, you are locked to 30 frames a second, but you've got more quality options. Like the settings have been turned up a bit versus PlayStation 5. There's more people on the street, the graphics generally look better, but it is locked to 30 rather than 60. So that one's a bit of a toss-up. Do you want smooth or do you want pretty? Yeah. With the Series X, you get all of the pretty of the S version, Series S. So the increased crowd density, higher resolution textures, just higher resolution in general, but you get 60 FPS. And they both play really well. Still buggy, but they play significantly better than they do on the base consoles from previous gen. It's actually playable. And
that's a good start.
And for anyone to say that, like, but it doesn't look as good, mate, you are really, really chomping at the bit there to complain that that it doesn't look at least decent on those consoles, because
it doesn't look as good as like someone who's got a rendering farm.
Yeah, like that's it. But it's
all right. Say does it look better than everything else on here? If the answer is yes, it's doing its job.
Pretty much. I mean, it looks good, and the fact that it's running last gen code, like the code base is last gen. It looks good. CD Projekt Red, they've done good with those textures and that. They look decent. It plays well. They just clearly didn't have the power to do it on last gen hardware. As I say, I'm interested to see what they do with the current gen. I'm playing it through on Xbox and PlayStation 5 side by side, just making slightly different choices to see how things pan out. And it's been all right. And then I decided I was going to launch my PC version as well. So I'm actually now playing through 3 different versions at the same time. So, how are you finding your experience? Because it's still pretty buggy. How's it been going for you?
So I never had a great deal of issue with bugs when I played it the first time. I put in about 35, 40 hours ish between them when I played it through. When it launched in December to about sort of late January, I played it through to. So I put quite a lot of hours in.
Mm-hmm.
And
you put a lot more hours in than I did.
Although if you add up the different systems you've played it on, you probably
for
sure. Hand on heart, I didn't experience any what I call game-breaking bugs. I had the odd thing where like sort of someone gets an NPC might sort of like get a bit stuck in a loop, but nothing game-breaking.
I had a couple. I had a couple on PC day one.
I personally didn't. That's also I didn't have any. I didn't. I'm touching lots of wood now. I had no. I feel I had 1 or 2 crashes, but in general, in the first 30 odd hours, which ain't bad.
I was going to say 30 hours. That's phenomenal.
That's not bad. So I put myself in the category of probably one of the luckier people, because I seem to be obviously there's been a massive variance. Some people like just. I'm talking more like PC sort of forms of followed. Some people just had horrendous trouble with it. Or crashing, like one person said, it crashed roughly every 2 hours for me. Some people were like me, had no real issues at all.
My PC was jank and I didn't have that much trouble.
Yeah. There's a big, wide, gambit of people with problems. So I was quite lucky. I enjoyed it. Also, I've now gone back into it. So it's hard for me to actually say. It definitely feels more fluid. It not by a long shot. We're talking little gains here.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels more fluid. When it comes to how much more stable it is, I can't really comment because I didn't have a lot of bad experiences the first time. It does, however, feel a bit more solid. And when I say solid, I'm not saying perfect. I'm saying it doesn't feel. It did the first one. It always felt when I've played it, it felt like it's working, but sometimes feels like it's being held together, a bit of duct tape here and there. Yeah. Now it feels like someone in some hammers and nails and actually sort of properly fitted it a little bit better. So it feels better. So I've put in the last sort of week and a half. I've probably put in between, I want to guess about 10 hours.
Yeah,
something like that. I've probably put in basically playing catch up. And
can I just quickly throw out there? Your first 30 hours were pretty much just the prologue.
That's because I spent a lot of time doing side missions.
But they gave you access to them in the prologue.
Yeah. The prologue was one of the last things I did.
Yeah.
Pretty much. This is actually my big thing. If you're going to play Cyberpunk, don't make the mistake I did. One of the reasons I stopped was I burnt myself out a little bit of it. And it was because I was doing a lot of side missions.
It's overwhelming.
Very overwhelming. And a lot of the missions like, there's a crime being reported here. Go deal with it. There are lots of those about, and they repeat.
Yeah.
And actual fact, don't bother with them. They initially, perhaps you want a bit of gear, we go for a bit of grinding. But actually fact, once you've got a couple hours in, don't bother with them. I'm now basically concentrating on, the way I'm playing it now is main story missions. If I go past somewhere and like a side mission pops up, particularly like if I can remember Regina calls you.
The fixer, the bounty hunter.
Yeah, the fixer. She rings you up and says, "Hey, there's a mission, I need to go do this." I'll pick those up on the way past, but I won't go out of my way to do it. I'm enjoying it a lot more doing that because it feels more like it feels actually more like a linear game. And
Yes.
actually, that makes it feel tighter and a bit better, because that's how, in my opinion, it should be played. Concentrate on the main missions, do the odd side mission here and there. Don't really want, if you really need to just want to burst of steam, go to one of the little like sub missions, but don't worry too much about them.
Yeah.
Don't worry too much about them. And that I'm now enjoying a lot more doing that. And I have to say, those missions are bloody long. They are. So this afternoon, I basically started playing this afternoon. I got about 1 o'clock, and you said, "Hey, do you mind streaming it for us?" I did, streamed it, and I streamed about 4.5 hours, I think.
Something to that effect, yeah.
Yeah, and in that time, I did 2 missions,
Yep.
main missions, and because they're just so long. And in the prologue takes about. If you were to just go straight to prologue, I went at prologue section before like the actual like main title runs.
Yep.
That's probably about a good like 6-7 hours.
I reckon you could get that in about 4 with minimal dicking about. Or with a bit of dicking about, you can do the heist in about 4 hours.
Well, it's interesting because I had a look before we came on. I went and looked on how long to beat. I saw other people reporting. Some people are saying they get through the main storyline in 22 hours on average. I can't quite believe that. Maybe if you knew exactly what you were doing and you say weren't dicking about, people do it in 22 hours. That seems a bit short to me. On average, people are saying they're completing like main and other bits about 60.
That sounds more reasonable to me.
Sounds more reasonable. And doing like everything in about 100 hours.
Yeah.
Which sounds, but to be fair, you get 100 hours, get 60 hours out of a modern game. Actually,
That's a lot.
That's a lot of content, and I think we misunderstood. We really bashed these games like, oh, it's a bit short. No. If you're getting, you pay that same money for a game that lasts 6 hours these days.
Yeah. Average COD games, what, 4 hours these days? Or when they have stories, between 4 and 6 hours.
And same price.
Yeah.
So I definitely a lot of experience. I mean, I suppose it's sort of like now just to move on actually a bit too. We've discussed the lore, we've discussed it running. Onto actually like the content of the game. So I have by content of the main stories, I've really found myself a lot more invested into it. I've really sort of absorbed myself into the sort of experience.
Yes, by skipping all of the side fluff and just locking straight onto that story.
Yeah, and because the story's actually pretty decent so far. What I've played,
it's all right.
It's for a game. That's a pretty decent story.
Yeah,
let's face it, most game storylines are shit.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree.
Most game stories. So actually, as a computer game, I'm engaged in the story. I'm enjoying it. I'm sort of seeing the routes through. I'm sort of following, and I like the characters. At least the ones that I've so far. And it doesn't. It's quite happy to sort of fuck people up as well.
Oh yeah.
I don't spoil too much the prologue, but something pretty dramatic happens in the prologue.
Well, it's shown in the trailer. Anyone that's seen that trailer, yeah.
Oh, I watched the trailer, so all right. Well, a main character dies in the prologue.
Yeah,
that's as far as I'm going to say.
It's shown in the trailer. Anyone that sees it,
if you watch the trailer, you'll know who it is. If you don't watch the trailer, you won't know who it is.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy it. Because obviously you've now played. Because I've obviously just played the one playthrough. Because I played the corporate background.
Yes, I went Nomad on all 3 of mine so far.
You've done Nomad on all 3. Okay.
I wanted to see how individual speech options and slight build changes would change how things happen in the story. And apparently, a reasonable amount.
Well, that's what interesting I think, because I played a mission this afternoon where I basically go meet up with some nomads.
Yep.
Now, from my V's point of view, I grew up in the corporate world. I don't really know about the culture, so my experience, and I'm sort of talking to them like I don't really know what's going on. I know of nomads, I know who they are, but I don't know all the ins and outs. I don't know if you've played that mission yet.
No, I'm right on top of that mission. I haven't started it yet.
I would like to know. You have to tell me what it was like for you, because you're playing a nomad character. That should be there should be so many more. That mission should really tie in heavily to your background.
Well, there's a mission before that where you went rocking through a mall, and you confronted a netrunner, didn't you?
Yes.
And you had a speech option for caught by you, and I had one for Nomad. And you hit the caught by speech check. I hit the Nomad one. They were near identical.
That's interesting.
Sadly, it was near identical.
That's a shame, because that should. In theory, that I should have had a better outcome than you because I was dealing with a very corporate person.
I think that key storyline speech doesn't change much. However, in those side missions, our kind of character choice, our build option, our
Background.
yeah, our background story seems to matter. Like I did a couple of quests where I had to find this person, and certain characters were more than happy to just give me a straight out answer and shortcut me to where I had to go, just because I was a nomad. Whereas I'm sure you'd be able to do the same. Like if it was, for example, if you were to speak to some of the same characters, they would ask you for money. And in early game, quite a significant amount of money. But I was just able to go, oh yeah, mate, you're a bit of a dick. And they'll have a bit of nomad banter. And they're like, oh yeah, they're fucking over there, mate. And it's like, oh, cool. I'll see you later then.
The answer to sort of the main missions is, like I say, if I've got a dialogue option basis, I'm sort of based on my core background, and you say it's the same as yours, well, just don't put it in there. Just, don't have that option mission there because you haven't got that background. But you still plays it the same way, because it has to be out certainly the same way, somewhat.
Yeah, that was it. It was just that it was kind of, I think in that case, that speech option was literally give them a bit of attitude.
Yeah.
Show them that you've had a bit of a rough time up to that point. We didn't say the exact same thing, but it was near enough on the button.
Yeah. It's very much there's A, B, C, D, E, F path, but we all get to G at the end of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Thing, yeah. Good. Yeah, because what level are you at the moment?
Oh, you know what? I don't know, but I'm nowhere near as high as you are.
Yeah, because I'm level 18, with a street cred level of 39. I'm averaging all my guns now do at least. Oh, go away, Siri. All my guns now do at least 200 DPS. That's just because I'm just at high level. So I did find that mile mission fairly easy.
Yeah.
Because I was way over leveled for it.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing a lot of side missions, I've got myself basically so leveled up.
So I found that I didn't have many decent weapons with me at all. My average DPS is around 130 to 150, unless I use a melee weapon, which brings me up to 300. But if I were to craft a weapon, like if I had the right parts to craft the same weapons I have. So if you have a weapon on you, and you craft a new one of it, not upgrade it, but just craft a new one, you'll generally find, like, I have a cane from a mission beforehand, and it does about 350 damage. If I craft that weapon now, given my current level, it will double the damage.
Yeah.
I'm nowhere near that. Like, all of the guns that I could craft or find are going to be significantly better than what I have now. And that mission, it wasn't hard, but I will say that my normal playstyle probably wouldn't have worked. So I actually, after watching you adopt my playstyle, because you were
was being very stealthy.
Yeah, sure you were.
My stealth precision rifle.
I was that rifle blasting through the walls and that was brilliant, by the way. I don't have anything like that. That would have been so fucking useful.
Were you watching the bit where I just guessed where the guy head wasn't got a headshot on him? Did you see that bit?
I didn't know.
So there's a bit where I'm upstairs and the guys come up the escalator, and when they speak, the dialogue appears above where they are. Yeah. I used that to guess where his head was shot before, and I got a headshot on him.
Mate, I could have swore there were more enemies when I went through it, but when I went through it, they all kind of bundled into one place, whereas when you took them out, they were actually quite well spread. And I also found myself getting locked into a room at one point. Like a shutter went down, and I was like, well, how the fuck am I supposed to get the hell out of here?
That did happen to me as well. I got shuttered in.
But and did you find that enemies clipped through the walls for you?
Not on that mission. I think I have had an enemy clip like an arm or something through a wall. I haven't had an enemy like walk through a wall.
I had a that shutter that comes down to stop you from going into the main section of the mall. A guy just literally ran clean through it. I'm like,
Oh, I didn't have that.
I don't know what I'm supposed to think of that, but because I couldn't do much damage, and I didn't have anything ranged either. I either ran in and got shot to soldery, or I went stealth. Ooh, I never do that. So I've just upgraded my cyber deck to to be able to do a little bit more, or to do a few more quick hacks before I run out of RAM. And my hacking skill isn't very high. But I will say I've got a complaint about the stealth in that game.
It's pretty tricky.
I wouldn't say it's even tricky. I'd say it's cheap. Because I mean, you had enemies aggroing you when, in some cases, they weren't even facing you.
No, there were a couple bugs like that.
And there were a couple of cases where there was no fucking way that enemy would have. Well, I mean, they could have done if they had augments or whatever. But I mean, they couldn't have seen you. You barely peered out from your hair. Would have been on show coming from around the side of a wall, and they're like, "There he is!" I was like,
"Mate, you know what they saw? They saw my panties."
Yeah, well, yeah, that's it. That's it. They were like, "Oh, look at that sexy bird walking along there. Hello."
He's got a beard.
Cool. I'll have a bit of that. But it's broken, and because obviously in the tutorial it actually shows you the best way to do stealth is to hack cameras. But I find that there aren't actually often that many cameras.
And it's not like Watch Dogs where you can jump from camera to camera to camera to camera, is there?
But that's how I did them all, because I found a camera that I could hack into, and I just kind of drifted around the cameras on show, which were terribly placed, by the way. So many security fucking black spots. But I just ended up just running quick hacks, because the thing is, the enemies are thick as fucking posts.
Oh, pretty quick, yeah.
They can aggro you, see you, and then you just go, "Oh, I'm going to hide over here," and they go kind of GTA on you and go, "Oh, well, I haven't seen him for a little bit. I'm just going to stand here and twiddle my fucking thumbs," and then you can shoot them in the face, and they're like, "Where did that come from?" And they just stand there and get killed.
Yeah, the enemies basically have two modes: run at you and shoot. That's
that's basically it.
Or sit behind cover and never pop out. That's the
it.
two modes they have. Hence why I've got the rifle that can shoot through walls.
Handy. So, I need to get me one of those. So in the end, I just sat there in this like room in like an office that you had to go through to get in there into the mall, and I just quick hacked the fuck out of people from the cameras. It took forever until I was like, this is taking too long. I'm gonna go out, craft a couple more offensive quick hacks so I could go one quick hack while that's cooling down, do the next one. Whilst that's cooling down, do the next one. And once I got 3 quick hacks that did damage in my cyber deck, I was steamrolling fucking everything.
Yeah.
It was no issue at all. But the trouble is, most areas in the game aren't built like that.
No.
Cameras are few and far between, which is bizarre. in the dystopian future, in a cyberpunk future, tech is everywhere, but no cameras.
Because the fact that you can hack cameras, it'd make it too trivial, wouldn't it? Trivial, that's strong. So that's definitely a case of game design overruling storyline,
Sure.
sort of background. That's something you see all the time in games. There's a compromise between what makes sense from a story point of view and what makes a game fun or challenging. And that's clearly a case of what they had to do. Is like, we could design it to be totally realistic and have cameras every corner, but it makes it
what I
trivial.
mean is that the stealth is kind of broken without those cameras.
Yeah,
because in some cases, if the enemies were any smarter, I don't think you'd really be able to stealth around some of those areas because of how awkwardly some of them are placed.
Yeah, there must be a creep button. I must have forgot what the creep button is, because
Control.
I tried to control. Because I tried to sneak up on people twice, and they just turned around and saw me. So I got like 6 feet of them.
Yeah, you're not allowed to just walk. You have to be crouched down.
I was crouched down.
Yeah, that's it then. That's it. But that's what I'm saying as well, though. Sometimes enemies, when you were fighting them, I mean, you were getting spotted by guys that were at least 500-600 yards away.
Yeah.
Further.
Yeah.
I mean, you were taking long routes around places and still getting spotted. It was absolutely ridiculous. And then other times you just walk up and it's like, well, where are they then? I'm stood right next to a couple of them and they haven't even noticed me yet.
the trouble is that from a stealth, one of the fun parts of stealth is you need to have to make a fun stealth game should have either some sort of knockout mechanic, which is fine, or a reliable weapon that will take somebody out in one hit, but perhaps has been quite close. So traditionally, it's a silenced pistol. That's the traditional one they give you. Silenced pistol, but you've got to get reasonably close, not super close, but it will take somebody out one hit if you get them in the head.
Yep.
Trouble is, because it's a level-based system, you can't be sure.
No.
This person.
You pull the trigger and he's still standing there.
Yeah, it may take all his health off, most of his health off, or half the health off, and you can't be sure. So you don't use a stealth weapon like that because actually you don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah.
In games where, because if this was a linear game, you would do things like, okay, we'll have some enemy types who wear helmets. That tells a player, like, these guys, you have to get up close and knock them out. You can't use a pistol on them.
Yeah.
Or like these guys wear. So take a really old school like Deus Ex. Pretty much every enemy you find, headshot kills them instantly. There are guys who've got heavy armor on who won't work on. So you learn how to you sort of stealth games work. You need to know the rules inside out.
Yeah.
And you then manipulate the rules or work within the rules to make it work. Games where you have this sort of free-form stealth, like Cyberpunk and games, the rules are a bit woolly, and that makes stealth harder.
Yeah.
Because you don't know. You can't. So, like, I stuck up on top of a building. I aimed for a guy there. I got close to the guy. He started to turn around, so I shot him in the head. By rights, in my opinion,
that should have been it.
Should have been down, got down, job done. But because it's, we calculate the damage you do. Here's the level he's at. Calculate the health he's got. Oh no, you didn't do it. It just sort of that actually I find makes stealth less interesting because you haven't got it. Because part of the fun of stealth is feeling that you're all powerful.
Yeah.
But at the same time, at any moment, it'll go horribly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You're the most I've heard this before. You're the most powerful person in the world, but the most weakest person in the world at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's to me a fun stealth experience, and that's why stealth. Skyrim has the same issue as well. Although they fixed Oblivion was a lot worse because archery in Oblivion was terrible. But Skyrim made a lot more things, so you could sort of roughly guess you look at an enemy whether you're going to take him out or not. But it was a bit better. But this game, because obviously in Oblivion you had different monsters at different levels, so you sort of knew what was going to work. Whereas this, obviously, a human looks the same whether they're level 1 or level 20. They look the same.
We'll give him a little bit of credit in that Ripperdoc Vic, Ripperdoc being someone that can augment you, does mention that his example was boxing. Boxing isn't quite as interesting anymore because of people having implants and stuff like that, so that you could literally just shoot someone in the head and they are fine.
Yeah.
That gets to be really awkward because from sight you can't tell what someone's augmented with, and I don't think the scanner gives you all that much detail.
No.
Either.
No. I think the fix to me would be you can get damage bonuses to weapons. Like if you have silencers, tend to give you a damage bonus.
Yeah.
Of like 2 times damage if you're in stealth, stealth mode and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
If it was me, I'd make a damage bonus a lot higher.
Yeah.
To make stealth steam on with a pistol a viable option. Because it just doesn't feel a viable option at the moment.
No.
It doesn't feel viable to do.
I mean, it was fun to watch you try and play stealth.
Yeah.
Only to find that stealth very quickly fell apart for one reason or another. You get past a handful of people, one person notices you from miles away. Yeah. Entirely possible because of augments again, but you can't use those as an excuse for stealth gameplay falling apart all the time unless you're using cameras.
Yeah. So stealth, when I have played it and completely fully stealthily, it's been where I've not killed anybody.
Yeah.
When I've literally just snuck around past people and so forth. That's the only sort of time I've ever truly had full stealth, because I don't try and kill anybody. So
There's that as well, and the idea that sometimes so let's say, for example, you stealth past a couple of guards, and then you die, and then the game reloads, and on that next run, all of a sudden, the guards that haven't moved, that you snuck past before, now see you when you were hidden in the same place, or somehow they've been alerted to a body that wasn't there before.
I had this afternoon. I went on top of a building. I was snuck behind somebody, saved because it took me a while to get there, so I decided to save. Tried taking out a pistol, didn't work, and everybody was there. So I thought, fuck it, I'm gonna try this again. So I reloaded.
Yep.
I loaded. He loaded facing the opposite way, directly at me. So I literally started loading the game right in his line of view, and I just dipped behind stuff, and he wouldn't turn around.
So I've seen that happen a couple of times. You know, Judy, the BD editor.
Yes.
Right. I loaded into the game, so I finished my game after a conversation with her. Loaded into the game, and when I finished my last save, she was sat down at her desk doing sweet fuck all. When I next loaded into the game, she was standing up. And then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, bam, her ass was glued to the seat.
Yeah.
I think that's happening all around the world when you reload.
Yeah.
It's not actually saving any positional data for these characters other than their base locations.
Yeah, it's not a full state.
Yeah, so everything's having to reload in, and that's where you're getting caught. Because the game's AI is still triggering that it's finding stuff as things are loading in.
Yeah. I could see him doing that to make loading quicker.
Yes, which I understand.
Yeah.
Because loading when the game came out was atrocious, but right now it's actually pretty quick. That's one thing I will say has improved a lot over launch.
I find the initial loading takes a long time. So when I first load it off, say, of the day, it'll take a long time to load initially. Once it's done that, though, if you quit the game and go back into it, it loads really quickly.
Oh, really?
It's that initial, yeah. So when it crashed, so I had a crash this afternoon. Whole game completely crashed. And the first time I loaded up, probably took about 3 or 4 minutes to load.
Really?
This time the first time. When I reloaded after the crash, it took about 20 seconds, and it was there, ready to go.
I haven't had loads like that since the game came out.
Yeah, no, it's the first load takes forever. Once that initial loading's done, though, it's fine. The actual loading to main menu's quick. It's the actual loading the actual game up.
So you know when you have that initial load screen, so you hit continue or load game or whatever as you get to the title, because obviously it plays that little sting, doesn't it, to say, "Oh, hey, welcome to Night City," and it plays that fucking advert over and over and over again from that TV show. When you continue the game, there's a scene at our current point in the game where the TV presenter is talking to a representative of the NCPD.
Yeah.
And that's roughly a sentence before they mention the NCPD, right?
Yeah.
So maybe 10 seconds or so. By the time the presenter mentions the NCPD, I'm ready to go into the game. My machine is already loaded up and ready to go.
Yeah. So the first load, when I first load it, I hear the whole conversation.
Wow, I would probably punch through my screen at that point.
Well, that's why I load it up and go do something.
Well, it was like that on day one. Version 1.0 was like that, and I can remember when I played it on Stadia. Stadia then was like how my PC is now. Those load times are absolutely ridiculous. But it's a lot quicker now, in my opinion, than it was. Although it should be said, you are running a quad-core processor, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm running older hardware.
Yeah, whereas I'm not. So I get to steamroll with raw compute the load time. I think I actually probably have a faster SSD in my machine too. But I go for
again, this is the stuff is mine's not installed on SSD; it's on normal hard drive because I go for capacity over. And apart from the operating system, I have everything on. I'd rather have a big.
That's
hard
what
drive
I
with capacity.
did until I wiped my PC about a week ago.
Yeah.
Because I had 2 SSDs and spinning Rust, and in the end, I was like, "Well, I'm going to wipe my second operating system off my PC, and just use my second SSD as a games drive, and then use my spinning Rust drive for file storage, like video files and stuff like that." So that's made the game a lot more playable, in my opinion, just through load times, and if you want to save scum and stuff like that, it's a lot better. And
it's only the initial load that's slow. Once it's loaded once, it's fine.
Sure.
So it's only, and actually, I don't mind if the initial load takes a while. That doesn't bother me because, because as long as it's not having to wait. If I was to wait 3 or 4 minutes to load every single time, that would really. But initial load, I'm not too bothered.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you start the game up, you start loading, you go off. You probably, you've come home, you switch the PC on, start the game loading, go off, grab a drink, whatever, come back and it's loaded.
Yeah. As long as you don't hit the continue button and it loads in past that dialogue scene, and just imagine if that auto loaded instead of giving you the skip option at the end of the loading screen, and you would just look right in front of the guy and he just bipped you in the head and you have to reload again.
Hence why I have a policy of never saving in a combat situation.
Yeah, good time.
We should probably talk about, because we've discussed, obviously, we're probably sure about sort of general, we've discussed briefly sort of mechanics so far. Probably we'll discuss those or bits a bit more where we are. So, in case people just join us for the first time. So, you play Garrett, first person shooter game, build your character. So, it's quite a lot to do in it. You've got a lot of things you can do. So, you can craft weapons and armor. You can upgrade weapons armor, which I find is generally more efficient than. I find it's better because you pick up so many guns in the game. It's far more efficient to dismantle them and then upgrade what you've got. Then wait for someone to turn up, which is better. You can do that, and you will. I know that works. You will come up, but I find generally it's better. And occasionally you will come across something that's a lot better than what you've got. Well, in that case, you switch over. But rather than switching a gun every 10 minutes, you switch over. And then just keep upgrading. And actually, you'll keep ahead of the curve, as it were.
Yeah. Assuming you've got higher grade materials at least.
But then those tools are so cheap to buy.
Yeah,
they are. If you want, they are so cheap. Apart from the really rare stuff, but you go to any gun shop and they'll have hundreds of them. And then they're so cheap, and you earn so much money just doing stuff. Actually, that's not such a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
The crafting, the upgrade system, I said. It's simple, but it works. It knows you to pick up. I did have a fire experience with what I mentioned panties earlier. So you pick up weapons, you pick up armor. Your armor is basically your clothes.
Yeah.
And Cyberpunk works very much on the system of the actual stats are sort of devoid completely from what it is.
Yeah.
So you
could wear like a leather cap. Or a baseball cap, and all of a sudden that's got way more stats than a riot helmet or whatever.
Yeah, because the riot helmet's level 1, the baseball cap's level 20, so it's a lot better, even though it's completely. It's nonsensical that it is.
Yeah.
Same with a gun. You can pick up a gun at level 1, and it does like 210 damage. Pick it up at level 20, does 200. Same gun, exact same gun, but just by the fact that it's higher level, does more damage. So I come across a pair of the shorts that ladies wear that
hot
are like
pants.
hot pants. Well, see, this is the man of the world. I didn't know they're called hot pants. They're basically the ones that are they're almost a thong, but not quite.
Yeah, you're almost rocking a pair of Daisy Dukes.
Yeah. So I come across those, and that had I think like armor level 43.
Yeah.
Something ridiculous like that, and it blasted everything, all my other underpants out of the water. So I've been wearing those the last like 20 hours of the game.
That was fantastic. This big muscly guy rocking around in like stockings and fucking.
I did take a screenshot of that, so I'll link that in the show notes.
That was beautiful.
You picture my guy in his underpants. And yeah, my sister came in, because she just saw was watching me play it, sort of first and say, "Oh, here's I've got Jackie's Archer's bike." I hop on the bike and obviously it goes to third person, so you just see me with my little panties on, getting onto the bike, and she's like, "What are you wearing?" I said, "It's good armor." It's just like,
Yeah, like
that looks ridiculous.
they
That's
make it
good
so
armor.
easy to make your character look like a dick.
Yeah.
But that's kind of one of the things in Cyberpunk is I think it actually says it in one of the core books, core rule books of the pen and paper RPG. Like, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you look good doing it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
they want you to look outrageous and just...
Yeah. And it's a very cyberpunky way to do it, where the character... Because that's why cyberpunks have always been very... It's always been a very... You know, you'll have a very sort of gender fluid sort of style dressing and so forth. You know, you have men wearing skirts and spiky hair and lipstick and, you know, and like just like that, just because it's just the way it is, because it's just the future and it's just crazy and bizarre and
everything is normal. Everything is normalized.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly, it is. So yeah, so you can't have your armor, you got your armor, so. And your armor is sort of, you've got like sort of underclothes, you've got like pants, you've got like shoes, you've got like undershirt, a jacket, and then you've got like a face
hats,
and
masks,
masks, and so forth. And yeah, if you're like me, you just pick whichever's highest level. I get a feeling, I'm going to ask a silly question. Does this work very, because I don't play with it, does this work very similar to like MMO style, where like the weapons sort of like the stats are devoid from each other, so you can get like a bow at level 1, a bow at level 20, very different stats, even though they look the same, and...
Well, generally, yes, but they do tend to change what the fucking thing looks like. But then, I mean, sometimes you could find the generic, like, so you got like a legendary thing, that'll have its own real cool skin. But the more generic stuff doesn't really change all that much. Like, oh, well, that's weird. So what's this made out of? Balsa wood, and this one's made out of the finest wood in all of whatever. Same as in an MMO. Same as in stuff like Destiny and all that as well. Morrowind's kind of the same in that regard. You know, but then they have different material types, though, don't they? For what's the more powerful thing. It's goofy in Cyberpunk, but then it's fucking Cyberpunk. Like, their idea of the future was walking around in like clear heels and like your jacket was made of clear plastic and shit.
Sort of anything goes.
Like goes. Your clothes were made out of shower curtains, basically.
Yeah, anything goes. Armor and weapons can be modded.
Yep.
They have to have mod slots available,
which I haven't done much of, to be honest.
No. And build and some of them pretty obvious, like the barrel modifications. Well, that's basically going to be basically silencers. But they do vary. Sometimes they'll just like do like twice as much damage, but they reduce your overall damage. So twice as much if you're stealthy, but reduce your damage by 30%.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously just twice as much when you're stealthy. Some, like I've got a silencer on my pistol now, which doesn't do any damage reduction at all, but it's 2.5 times when I'm stealthy.
Yeah.
Which is good. You can also put scopes, and so I think most even sort of like long range weapons have no scope at all. They have iron sights unless you fit a scope. And there are quite a variety of scopes. And again, scopes with the same principle. You can have 10 scopes, all the same description, all say the same, but have slightly different stats.
Yeah.
And they tend to sort of affect your range. So obviously, I tend to pick scopes that feel more practical. I've not actually come across a lot of zooming scopes, as in scopes that really sort of like do much zooming in. So I've not come across one of those.
Maybe one in my entire time so far. Over like 500 platforms.
Yeah, it's not many that do seem to do actually like any sort of zoom, which feels very odd. So sniping is possible, but you're going to be sniping with at best a scope which has got proper sights on it, but not zoomed in, which makes stuff a little bit more odder. But generally speaking, most combat you're not that far away. Even like out on the plains, you can get.
I think it is kind of the most combat areas or most combat arenas are actually quite tight spaces in Cyberpunk. So
it's not a big deal. It's not really a big deal. So weapon mods. Your character works by so you have like a top level stat. And then your stat breaks down to several sub categories. So you have like an intelligence stat that'll break down into, I always go to one way around, has like computer, like hacking, and has something else in it. But they're like sort of sub trees. But those sub trees, how far you can go along that tree is dependent on your overall stat.
Yes.
So your high level sensor puts a cap on your low level stats. It's like a 2-tier.
So you have like breaching and quick hacking on one of your skills, but then depending on how much you use that individual skill will dictate how many perks you get for that skill too, which can give you points as you level that up to put into a tree, but you don't have to necessarily put it into that tree.
And then as you level up your character, you get enough. You basically can increase one of your core stats up. So the example you gave there, the core stat is intelligence, which I'm on level 11, which is quite high, because I've gone towards the thinky, intelligent.
You've gone for the hacker tree, so you've now got more RAM slots to do more quick hacks and breaches.
Yeah, and I'm hacking left, right, and centre. I can put loads of hacks out very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm basically playing the equivalent of a mage class.
Yes,
is really what I'm playing. Slightly sort of stealthy mage. It's all what I say stealthy. My stealth sniper rifle.
That's it. Hey, like we said earlier, if they're dead and they can't tell anyone, well, they just,
it's stealth.
Stealth. No one caught you. They're gone.
Yeah. If there's no witnesses to tell them what they look like, stealth.
No one knows.
Yeah. What have you focused your character? I know you'll say obviously you're not as high level as me, so maybe you haven't quite focused yet. But where is all you finding your stuff?
So my stats are actually quite evenly spread, but I put a chunk of my stats into just the body stat for health.
Yeah.
Because I realised very early on that I wasn't a huge fan of how stealth worked in Cyberpunk, because you could get caught by someone that really couldn't see you.
Yeah.
Just because of how awkward some of the line of sight detection was. You could be dead silent and you're still caught, which I just blame on augment. So I went body stat on the off chance that things went south, which has proven to be fucking brilliant, because I can just kick down doors and lift open, like, when the big steel shutters go down, I can just rip those straight back up.
Yeah.
I can actually threaten other characters more. So, like, there's a mission where there are a bunch of punks guarding this Ripper dock, like just camping outside of his place, like being a bunch of dickheads, and I can just walk up there and say, "You fucking dare," and I'm gonna smash your faces in, and they're like, "Whoa, he's clearly a bit," and then they just walk off. And then I think I went. I've put a few into the intelligence tree so I can get my RAM up for quick hacks, because I only had 4 RAM slots up until very recently, which is fucking useless.
No, I feel I've got 16 or 18.
Yeah, I've got 9 now. I've got 9 RAM slots, and that was mainly through upgrading my cyber deck, and that was still shit.
Yeah.
Because some enemies just like, to use a skill, even after you've like used the whole breach thing to reduce RAM costs, I'm still going to use 8 points. I'm like, how the fuck am I supposed to quick hack anything around here? And I still often find myself, because obviously enemies are leveled based on area, not based on me. There are many, many, many enemies I can't even touch with a quick hack. So it makes them almost pointless for me. Yeah. I updated is it reflex, which you're supposed to be able to use for aiming, but that also works well for conversations.
Oh, does it?
Yes, and cool. So depending on who you're talking, depending on who you talk to, those give you more speech checks. So like someone like I think T-Bug, the Netrunner, she's better to talk to with stuff. The cool stat, you get more options to talk to her with. Yeah. But if you talk to, say, Judy, the BD editor, I think hers are all based on reflex.
Oh, interesting.
So you get different dialogue options based on those stats. I always tell people about Minecraft moments where, Minecraft is a procedurally generated game. Sometimes you just kind of wander through a cave and find something magical. I had a Minecraft moment, and that's where I was like, I kind of get what Minecraft is now. Up until that point, I just thought it was this janky thing where I blow things up, like build things and make them explode with TNT. I walk through a cave, and there's one flower and a patch of dirt, and there's a hole in the cave roof just lighting up this one patch of dirt. I was like, oh, that's beautiful, amazing, Minecraft moment.
Yeah.
I had one of those in Cyberpunk, which was what kind of got me back into the game. Yeah. stats and speech checks have been a thing for millions of years. Fallout 1 and 2 had them. Fallout 3 didn't because it was so poorly written they didn't matter. It did. They were just shit. What other game?
New Vegas had stat checks.
Yeah, and
if you maxed out your speech skill, you could pretty much bypass every conversation.
You could in Fallout. Might have been Fallout 2. You could actually finish the game without combat.
Yeah,
just by talking to people. It was really good. And a lot of Western RPGs had stuff like that where you could just literally up your charisma and just talk your way out of everything. I had a moment in Cyberpunk like that, which made me appreciate how things can change based on how I talk to people. They might not be huge changes for people, but I was tasked to go and find some drugs from a flat. Like, some drugs have been stolen, and I was asked to go and get them. And I go to the flat, it's run down, it looks like the upper floors have been bombed out or trashed. And I find one door that is just it's locked. My technical ability states that I can just open the door. I don't knock or anything, I just fucking open that door. I'm in, which I've kind of enjoyed, because there are many a door that I've just opened through brute strength or having a high enough tech stat. You know, not even need to, I'm in. I don't have to talk to anyone, I don't have to find keys. I'm just in because I'm that fucking good.
Yeah. I just look at it and it opens.
Pretty much. You know, I say, open fucking sesame, motherfucker, and that door opens up. I open up this door to this apartment, and all of a sudden, this big fucking... not huge as far as Cyberpunk is concerned, but this pretty big dude is stood at the door with like a rifle or a shotgun. And I'm like, oh shit. I didn't want to shoot him because I've actually found it weird. I'm not just running and gunning in Cyberpunk. You know, if you ever see me play games like Far Cry and that, I don't stealth at all because I don't see the point. But in Cyberpunk, I started to kind of go, well, I'll wing through some of these conversations, see how things go. And this thing came up where, because I'd increased my body stat, I got an extra speech option with this guy. I didn't want to just pull my gun and shoot him, which I could have done and just gone in and took the drugs. I had an option to talk to him and say, oh yeah, and you needed a relatively high physical stat to do this. It says, oh yeah, your gun, you're not a cyber psycho. You know, you're not a drug addict. You're a soldier. I recognize that gun, and I recognize how well you've looked after it, kind of thing. What the fuck is going on? And I managed to talk the guy down instead of having a firefight with him. And he just said to me, look, just take the drugs. They don't fucking work. I'm not, you know, I'm just suffering. I'm an ex-soldier from, you know, the last great corporate war. And everyone has abandoned me. The system doesn't give a shit about me. And you basically just talk him down. You realize he's suffering with really bad PTSD and he's just really fucking depressed. So he tells me where the drugs are, and he says, right, just leave me alone. I just need to be alone. I'm like, okay. So I got to walk out the door. And I was like, you know, weirdly, I was like, I'm going to shut the door. I'm going to be polite. I'm going to shut the door to his apartment. But Cyberpunk has this thing where occasionally geometry breaks and things explode for no reason.
Yeah.
You know, like pizza boxes, you just hear this pop and just things just shower everywhere.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, fair enough. And all of a sudden I heard this bang and I was just, you know, something's broken again. It's not a big deal. And I was like, oh shit, no. Please don't tell me it's the guy hasn't. And I opened up the door again to his flat, walk into the back of the room, and he'd propped his gun that I complimented him on. He'd propped that beside his chair, sat down in his armchair, pulled a pistol, and shot himself.
Oof.
And that was the end of the quest. But that really struck me. I was like, I managed to talk the guy down from a firefight to start with, got a little bit more backstory out of him because I had my stats set this kind of way, in a way that you wouldn't have, as an example. Because, you know, as you said, you've gone all techie in that. He didn't have any tech options. He wouldn't have related to you at all.
Yeah.
So you probably would have had to have killed him yourself.
Yeah.
That really struck me. I was like, I haven't seen anything like this since maybe Fallout 2. Because Fallout 3 was horrible. You could do this kind of stuff in Fallout 3, but if anything was main story, as we've established with parts of Cyberpunk, the dialogue didn't really do a lot.
No. They don't want to cut off whole sections of story for you. They want to sort of make sure you get the main story. Whereas side missions, you can be prepared to cut off sections for you.
Yeah, because you might not, you might never see them, but they're still, the options are still there. I think isn't there a character in Fallout 3 where like a town gets nuked, but because they invested so much time in a character's story arc and her side quest, that even after the town's been nuked, she's one of the survivors, and she talks to you as if nothing had happened.
She turns into a ghoul. You find her as a ghoul.
Sure.
After the town's nuked. Was it Moira?
Yeah.
I think her name was. And she's want to get you to go and do all these the Vault to write the Vault Dreader Survival Guide.
Yeah.
If the town gets nuked, you find her as a ghoul round it.
Equally as happy as she was before the town got nuked.
To be fair, she is quite mad. So she wasn't exactly. She was definitely missing quite a few sets of spoons from the fork drawer from the cutlery.
She had a good few screws loose. She was definitely a few cards shy of a full deck, but
I could sort of like forgive that because she was quite mad. So
I can say mad, but the fact that she's just been nuked and goes on like nothing has happened at all was just a bit like, yeah, clearly you've written in a storyline that you're really happy with and you want us to experience. Whereas we could have just killed her off.
Yeah, it's they don't want to cut. They don't want to. Yeah, they don't want you to say, well, that whole set of missions is now completely unavailable to you.
Yeah,
because you killed. Well, after that, they should be brave to do that because, hey, what do you expect was going to happen if you blew up the bloody place where your mission giver was in? Mm-hmm. What did you expect to happen? I do know they did one thing. They actually got a bit messed up with the add-on, the DLC, because there's a bit where if you haven't blown up Megatron, was it Megatron? I think it's called.
Sure.
Some bigness. If you haven't blown up, against the end of the main campaign, the next stage, you go meet a guy who's in charge, like giving people the new purified water around all parts of the wasteland, and he asks you to go to Megatron and take some to them, arrange a shipment to them. If you then go blow it up and go back to him and say to him, it's not there anymore, it really freaks him out. So they did sort of learn it a little bit later on. I was like, oh shit, it's going to really, because it makes perfect sense. It's like, oh shit, it's blown up. What the hell? It was there a little while ago. What do you mean it's blown up? But yeah, they got better at that with, I think New Vegas is a little bit better than that because there was actually proper, New Vegas did actually have like a branching dialogue system and mission structure, whereas you get to a certain stage and it will just chop off whole sections of storyline become unavailable to you.
Yeah.
There's a point where you know it's going to happen. There's a point where you know there's like 4 paths you can take, and once you start going down one path, you can sort of like dabble your toes in it. But once you start going like 2 or 3 missions in it, that's it. Everything else is cut off.
Yeah,
gone. That's what they sort of like did it. So, but then New Vegas was built by most of the same people who made Fallout 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So you see that more. I had a similar mission back to Cyberpunk. I had a similar mission to what you described with my next door neighbour in the apartment I live in.
Oh yeah, sure. I haven't had any missions with anyone in the apartment yet.
Well, I come out and there's like 2 police officers.
I have wondered what's going on there.
Well, if you speak to them, they basically reveal that they know the guy there. He's actually another police officer.
All right.
But he's basically not come out since. But bear in mind, also I played this mission, but it's back December time, so I might misremember it. Basically, they say that he had a relative die, and since then he's just like sort of gone to put, and he's just hung away, and he's not come back to work. He's been there like months. He's gone, and you basically have to try and sort of find a bit more about it. And eventually, you track down, and you find that he hasn't had a relative die. He's had his pet tortoise die.
All right.
Yeah, and he's just really depressed the fact he's lost his pet tortoise. And you go back to him, you sort of like, and I think he's also lost his partner as well, like his cop partner as well.
Yeah.
And so he's like, it's all just cut apart. He's just like about to depress. and that kind of similar outcome. You can sort of like talk to him and sort of talk him out, and he'll like sort of leave and join the police force, or you'll just come back to him a few years later and he's hung himself or something.
Yeah.
So very similar thing. So that's but yeah, but again, if you totally ignore that, you won't see it. But that's just a little. That's I think example of environmental storytelling, because as you spoke to those guys, because it just looks like normal NPC fluff.
Yeah.
But actually, it's a story. There is a mission there.
Yeah.
So
I like little bits like that in Cyberpunk. I mean,
yeah.
When I initially played it, I mean, a lot of people were complaining. They thought that CD Projekt Red was going to promise that every side mission would have the depth of the main story, which is an absolutely ridiculous thing to think would be possible.
Want it either. You wouldn't want that either.
Especially given the length of some of those story missions.
Yeah.
But by the same token, there are some real gems on those side missions. Some really, really nice ones that do some fantastic world building.
Yeah. I think, I don't know if it's a main mission or not. I think it's a side mission. Is after the prologue, so one of your people dies.
Mm-hmm.
You get to go to their funeral, but I think that's a side
That's
mission.
an optional.
Yeah. And that
I think
unlocks quite. I think it's optional as well. That unlocks so much. You get so much backstory about basically you and him when they were younger. You get access to a new vehicle. So much of it's unlocked but you can completely ignore that mission.
Yeah.
If you really want to, and that's the sort of neat stuff that it does well. If they hadn't put so many of these NPCDAs reported violence in this area type thing, or gang activity, or something, they actually cheapen it a little bit.
Sure.
They shouldn't be there, in my opinion. I think actually I'd rather have. I actually think Cyberpunk would have been better if it had been crafted more like a linear game.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing a lot of people said as well. Actually, so because we're now going back to what people are complaining about Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
We were talking about stat systems and all that kind of stuff, but a lot of people have complained about, and I've done it too, that the game is actually very copy pasty. A lot of games are. This is an open world game that they can't design like 1,000 unique shops and spatter them all around the city. That's just not going to happen. No. So they take one design, maybe, and then make 3 variants of it or 4 variants of it, and then scatter that along like a street or whatever. Yeah. Realistically, they don't expect you to walk around every inch of Night City and go, right, there's a newspaper on the floor there, and there's that NPC there. There's another one of those shops about, 50 yards down the street. Okay, I'll go over there. Yep, same newspapers on the floor, same layout, same amount of foods on the shelves. It's hollow, it's empty, and it's full of fluff. They've just Control-CV'd a lot of stuff. However, if you stick to the story and the areas around those main story quests, you don't see any of that fluff.
Yeah.
They've built up a lot of the areas around the story because they're not going to waste their time making pretty for things they don't think you're going to see.
Yeah, well, let's face it, Skazz. Look at bloody GTA.
Mm-hmm.
GTA, most of the city is completely nonsense. No, it's just a series of boxes.
Yep.
In GTA games, they look pretty, but there are very few buildings you can go into, very few places you can explore.
Yep.
Nobody complains about that because it's designed to create the feeling you're in a big place.
Yep.
Not that you actually are. But if you do the same thing as you do in Cyberpunk, where you start just walking around, trying to walk in every building and so forth in Grand Theft Auto, you're going to be disappointed as well.
Yeah.
Because it's certainly the same. And it's just... It comes down to resources, and why waste your time handcrafting this shop in this corner here where perhaps 9% of players will never see it? What's the point?
Well, yeah, it's like because a friend of mine, an acquaintance of mine, made a video where they were talking about Cyberpunk. They're like, right, here's a kiosk shop, just roadside, literally 100 yards away. It's another one. It's nearly an exact copy paste, maybe 1 or 2 changes. Go down the road a little bit more. You might see the exact same shop you walked into the first time. I was like, well, what the fuck is this? Is stupid. This is a completely empty world. It's like, yeah, but the city's fucking huge, mate.
Yeah, when you're riding past that on your Jackie's Arch at full speed, you're not worried about that.
No, for sure.
No, you can barely chance to see them. So,
I mean, I'll be honest. When I first played Cyberpunk on PC, I walked everywhere, and the size of that city, it was daunting. I mean, sure, the buildings weren't all that interesting, but fuck me, just like looking at the distance between where I am now and where that next quest marker was, I was like, there's like 5, maybe 10 kilometers away, just to that next quest.
I think actually one of my and it's a very minor complaint of the city, is how that it's built in such a way that when you like go anywhere, you'll get a little you can get a little waypoint put on your map that shows you a path which you should take. The city's built in such a way that if you try and get off that path all the time, you simply can't.
Yeah.
There'll be like the buildings will just have nothing you can climb. So it's not like in Tuscany where you just be climbing over everything, bouncing everything, and just like taking shortcuts here, there, and everywhere. It's like, okay, it'd be quicker to walk through this. Oh no, I can't. There's just a block wall here. I can't climb.
I wonder how much that would change though if you got, say, like the double jump augments and stuff like that.
Probably be a lot more open and freedom. There might even be a deliberate reason to do that to make you feel. That might be deliberately that so that when you do get them, the city opens up even more.
Yeah,
that's probably supposed to be a deliberate choice to do that. So, but yeah, that's the only thing sort of close. I have because probably like I'm sure if I go this way, but I probably can't because if I do, I'll probably find myself.
Well, it's the same as if
get through that way.
It's the same as if we were driving around Lowestoft, the town that we live in, right? I wouldn't realistically go, right, I'm driving along Wopload Road and then expect to be able to turn, head towards Bird's Eye Foods. I was like, well, surely I can go down here. I was like, well, no, because they fenced it off. Because that's right next door to Bird's Eye's property. So they are going to fence it off and stop you from going that way. Realistically, they're going to do that in Cyberpunk too. There are going to be plenty of places you can't go, even though you'd think, well, surely I can just hop over the fence, or surely I can just cut. You can't.
Yeah. They just. I said it's a very minor complaint. It's not really a complaint. It's more of a.
I've had it too. I've had that same one too. Like I'm like, oh well, there's the next quest marker. Oh shit, it's down a level, but I can't go over that fence. Oh, for God's sake! Now I'm gonna have to go all the way down that road. Fucking hang left, all the way down to the quayside, back along, fucking, and then down one of these side alleys, and then I find like 5 more quests. It's like, oh, so much to do.
Yeah. So discuss crafting, discuss upgrading, discuss stats. I think we've covered all the main functionality. I suppose, the far thing sort of. Oh yeah, I'm not a fan of the map either. I don't like these big 3D
it's busy
maps.
When I first played it, I couldn't read it at all. I was completely lost. No, I know that sounds really dumb, but I was literally just so overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information going on that map. All these different icons and all. I was like, where the fuck am I?
To me, in a game, a map should be practical.
Yeah.
To me, a map is to get where Skyrim is the same. The map in Skyrim I hated because it looks really pretty. God, it's really hard to use.
Well, am I the only one that doesn't use
a nice 2D map? That's all I want.
Well, maybe I'm the only one that doesn't. I mean, I don't use the map in Cyberpunk at all. I don't use it. I just go because you know how you said, oh well, I'll just go to the shop and buy some materials. Like I'll go to a weapon shop. I've only gone to the weapon shop like maybe once or twice in my entire time playing the game. One of them you're practically forced to at the start of the game. The only other time I've spoken to that NPC was when I happened through story to end up back at my apartment. I've never gone to another weapon shop other than that.
Weapon shops are a good place to get materials for crafting
and upgrading. I've only ever bought materials for crafting and upgrading once, but then I've only ever done hardcore crafting and upgrading once. But like that, the map is jank. All I do is I open up my journal instead, and then go, well, here's the quest I want to find. Bam, go there, and then I just follow the marker.
Yeah, that's what I do tend to do. as well.
Because the map's horse shit. Because you've got, say, top, middle, and bottom too. So a quest might be above a floor above where you are, a floor below where you are. You can't see that on a map.
No.
And because the map is in 3D, you can tilt it at an angle too to be able to see lower levels. But it's a nightmare.
It's not practical. Maps should be practical in games. They shouldn't be something that has to be.
It would be like looking at a map of London and then having every single train line on your standard map, like your underground line on a standard. Like, oh hey, here's this road. Rather than just having a station marked for where the underground is, they then have all the lines marked on it. You're like, what the fuck is all of this? It's
a map of London, but you can only access it via Google Street View.
Yeah.
It's not. Yes, you technically can find it, but it's not very practical.
Sure.
That is sort of that seems to be a trend now. Let's make a really fancy looking map. No, just make it simple, please. Yeah. Make it useful, and also, please, I would like to be able to filter things.
There is a filter option, is there not?
Is there?
I think so. I don't. Like I say, I don't use it, so I don't use the map at all.
I think there is. I think I will say, okay, show me gun shops. Just show me shops that sell this.
Yeah.
Just show me, let me switch off all the NCPD markers. Let me switch those off.
Yeah.
Because as you say, it's you look at it, and it's like, oh, this just feels overwhelming.
Yeah. I mean, because even in the prologue, all of this is available to you.
Yeah.
Before the fucking title card even drops, where it says Cyberpunk 2077, fucking, that's like 3 to 4 hours worth of content, and it opens up a large chunk of the city to you, with all these NCPD missions, with all of these sub stories, side quests, and other fluff. It's just like, what the fuck am I supposed to do?
And that's actually where I made my mistake. That's where I made my mistake. I was like, I have this thing when I play games like this with missions. I want to complete all the side quests first before I do the main missions.
Yeah.
It's just how I've always approached this. So when you give me a game like that, it just overwhelms. It's actually daunting.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, that's part of the reason why I burnt out. Part of the reason why burning out of it when I went, then hence why I've gone back on. I'll just do main missions. I burnt off it is because of that situation. It's nice that they just like, here's the whole city opened up, go for it very quickly, but it's a bit too much.
Yeah,
there's too much going on.
And I found actually in speaking to people, most people quit just before or literally a mission after they do the heist.
So most people haven't met Keanu Reeves.
No.
Or have just met him.
That's it. That is literally it. That's where they hard cut it. Now, actually, just quickly, as soon as you've mentioned Keanu, or Johnny Silverhand.
Which is interesting, because that's where I burnt out.
Right? Which is where most people do. Where Johnny comes in, Johnny has that intro mission. Right? Johnny shows you how powerful you can become.
Yes.
Now, if you were doing as much damage as Johnny does as a stealth character, stealth would work so much better. Notice how Johnny just walks down a flight of stairs with his revolver and just one-shots nearly everyone.
Yeah.
That's an amazing feeling.
Yeah. And you can tell that's what they're trying to sort of like say, hey, this is what you will get to.
You will become a legend like Johnny Silverhand. Because at this point in time, or at that point in time, V is a weak ass piece of shit. And the trouble is, if you don't power level, like when you said about going to one of the characters' funerals, there are some enemies in that area that will fucking steamroll you if you are not careful. And that happens really early in the game. It's a mission you can completely skip. Yep. But that area is not safe to go to at the start.
Interesting, as you so much strong still, and it's probably now worth mentioning something you told me, which I didn't know, is that the storyline of Proton is actually based very heavily on the actual RPG.
I'm glad we got to this. Woo! Okay, let's go.
I had assumed that they took the world of Cyberpunk and took the world, took the sort of background, took all the background elements like organizations and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
A few people who play some of the characters might appear, but generally, I had assumed, because this is what most people would do, would craft their own storyline in that universe that was unique to them, and they'd craft the universe, but is fit in the background. You'll actually feel to me that actually Cyberpunk 2077 is storyline is based on the actual main game. In the storyline is based on the main game.
To a degree. The history of the world of 2077 is based on the pen and paper RPG from the 80s, Cyberpunk 2013. Called 2013 because it happens in 2013. Then there was a revision, Cyberpunk 2020, which happens in 2020. And then there are different revisions of the book which have extra bits of story that happen further in the future. So, 2020, 2027. And then I think that went all the way up to 2030, at which point they get in contact with CD Projekt Red and retcon the 2030 stuff. I think if I'm remembering that correctly. But a lot of the characters, companies, and the world is pulled right out of the Cyberpunk pen and paper RPG.
Johnny Silverhand himself is a main
Johnny
character.
Johnny Silverhand is on page 2, I think I said to you the other day, of the original edition 1 2013 core rulebook. Mentioned on page 2.
Yeah.
Rogue is in the one of the fixes. She's in it. The Arasaka family. Is it Yorinobu's the son? He's in it. They mention all of the family of the Arasaka family. The wife, the husband, is it 2 sons and a daughter? They mention Miltech. They mention all of the wars. They mention Johnny Silverhand's run on the Arasaka Tower, if I remember correctly. A lot of the vehicles, a lot of the stuff going on in Night City, all of the clans, the character choices that you make at the start, the Nomad, the Corpo, and the Street Kid. Those are dice rolls at the start of the pen and paper game for you to decide who you're going to play as. All the different gangs, they're all in the books or in the expansion modules. Loads and loads and loads of stuff. Now, I think more of the lore is in Cyberpunk Red, which is the newest revision of Cyberpunk 2020, which has more rulebooks, or more source books and modules that are tied into 2077 because of 2077. Because those books the Cyberpunk RPG started to get reprinted when CD Projekt Red was like, we want to do a fucking video game on this. I think that's when they started to work together to maybe re-release the game and some core new modules. But yeah, a lot of the a lot of the characters and a lot of the world was already written in the 80s. A lot of the augments, the Soul Killer, which is a thing that's established just around the prologue, and the Relic, that's in the core pen and paper RPG. What else is there? Oh, that's something I should mention. Speaking of the RPG, you actually have a copy of the RPG if you own Cyberpunk on PC. They give you a PDF of the Cyberpunk 2020 core rulebook. Something like 200 pages. Character sheets, the lot.
So you can play your own Cyberpunk 2077 yourself.
Yeah, I mean they have similar scenarios to the heist and stuff like that in different rule books. I mean, I've got a few of the rule books, and there's a lot of stuff in there. Characters like Jackie gushes over like Morgan Blackhand and Johnny Silverhand and Adam Smasher and stuff like that. They're in the game. They're in the pen and paper game. Because Morgan Blackhand's he's got like he made a weapons guide, sarcastic air quotes. That's one of the books, one of the Morgan Blackhand's Cyberpunk or Night City weapons guides or whatever. That's where Morgan Blackhand all of this stuff, all of the world building stuff is from the pen and paper RPG. I think that some people are going to miss out on some really cool stuff if they haven't played the pen and paper RPG.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen all of it or much of it in 2077 yet. Unless there's like shards dotted about that will tell me more of this backstory. But so far I'm like, who's that? Who's that? Or because I've read some of the core the rule books, I'm like, oh hey, it's that character. Oh hey, there's that.
Well, that's the reference I get.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. And again, mentioning that I've got a copy of Neuromancer on my desk. There's a fair bit of stuff from Neuromancer in Cyberpunk 2077. So maybe people should check that out too.
We can put links to that in the show notes, Neuromancer. People can check it out.
Sure.
Cool. Well,
yeah.
Right, so we've been talking about Cyberpunk now for the best part of 2 hours. So I think it's time we sort of wrap up our Cyberpunk visit. So
if you are going to play it on PC, Stadia, GeForce Now. If you don't have consoles or new hardware, so if you have a PC, play it on PC. If you don't, Stadia and GeForce Now is your next option. If you've got console or you want to go the console route, don't play it on base console. Only play it on current gen, Series S, Series X, or PlayStation 5.
Yeah,
that's the only way you're gonna. That's the only way you're gonna do it.
And my sort of top recommendation would be: don't worry about gigs. That's what they call the little ones. Don't worry about the little gigs. Just concentrate on the main quest and the bigger side missions. Don't worry about all the little bits and pieces. Treat it more like a linear game, and you'll get the best experience out of it.
Yeah,
that's how I would say. I would say wrap it up. When I first played, I quite liked it when it first came out. I knew the game was fairly. Although I said to you at the time, it didn't. Although it played all right for me, it felt a bit creaky.
Yeah.
I do think they have improved and fixed a lot of stuff, but it's not perfect.
Not by a long shot. Like you're trying to get through that. Do you remember that magic anti-theft window that you tried to kick your way through earlier?
Yeah. That was a nice little bughead earlier.
500 yards after Ram tried to get through a window.
Yeah, I got teleported back 200 meters. But overall, I've been really enjoying it. I'm glad I've gone back to it, and I can see myself. I'm now getting to this way. I'm just itching to play it again. I just want to load it up and just play it again. So yeah, I would recommend Cyberpunk. Actually, I would say people could prefer, but only with the caveat you mentioned and the caveat that's how you should play it.
Make sure that you have the hardware to play it. I know it's a bit of a bummer because a lot of people can't get a Series X or a PlayStation 5. And I know everyone says that Stadia is dead, but Stadia realistically is worth it for something like Cyberpunk.
Yeah, but hey, look at it this way. If you wait another few months when the PlayStation 5 stuff come down, they will get out there and the market's saturated and prices drop a little bit. Cyberpunk will probably be cheaper. You probably pick up cheap or pre-used, and you can enjoy it.
I don't know. Physical, maybe. Because Sony took it off the store for a year, they're commanding a high price. Because obviously they want to make their money for it on the consoles.
Yeah.
And if you've got if you've got the digital versions of the consoles, the Series S and the digital PlayStation 5, you can't go out and buy a cheap disc copy for say 20 or 30 quid. But again, like Ram said though, in a few months' time, maybe when the consoles hit the market properly, there's a decent saturation of consoles out there. They may have even released the next gen, sarcastic air quotes, patches to properly optimize the games for PlayStation 5 and Series X.
Yeah.
Might even get the ray tracing options. Ooh.
So there you go. Someone donation. Cool. So I think we've definitely put Cyberpunk to bed. Well, I just want to mention before we leave on, Valve's bad naming schemes.
Oh God!
So
We've hinted at this earlier.
Valve announced this week that they're launching a. I was trying to think. I think this is the first time someone's put PC hardware in like a handheld. I was thinking of this the other day. Because I don't think the NVIDIA Shield counts. That streams.
That's not true.
Is it not?
No, it's not true. There have been a couple of Windows 10 Intel Atom tablets that were for sarcastic air quotes PC gaming, but it was very light PC gaming. And I believe there was a portable kick-started handheld PC thing that got into people's homes maybe 6 months ago. That was reasonably solid. It was basically like the Nintendo Switch PC thing. That seemed to make people happy because they could watch porn and play somewhat decent games. But Valve has decided they're actually going to make one that works, kind of, maybe.
Yes. Well, Valve launched the Steam Deck,
Ugh.
which is very hard to Google because all you find is the Stream Deck.
By Elgato.
Yeah. I want to know who at Valve thought that was a good name. Of all the things they could call it, they had to call it the Deck.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so many other things would have fixed that. But no, they decided to call it. They decided to call it the Deck. Someone says they should call it the Train. But yeah. So, but yeah, basically, it looks like a Switch.
Yep.
In fairly similar layout, but it's got a few more buttons and controls on it, and it's basically a PC in a handheld form factor.
An AMD Zen 2 based PC handheld.
Yeah. Yes. Runs SteamOS 3.0.
The new one with Arch, is it not? It's Arch Linux based.
Yeah. So it runs a new SteamOS, and basically you buy it. And literally, if you just log in to your Steam library on the deck, and you then have access to install your games on the Steam library. Also, you can then download and play them on the deck itself. And away you go. It looks, as a bit of hardware, it looks pretty neat and solid. Minimize actually mentioned it to me. I missed the announcement. Minimize mentioned it says, "What do you think of this?" And I had a lot of trouble finding it because I googled Steam Deck.
Well, it was on the main page of Steam, wasn't it? Like if you open up Steam, it takes you straight to the store. It's right there on the main page.
I haven't been on Steam, so and yeah, he was mentioning it to me, and I was like, yeah, I don't personally a lot of mobile gaming's never really appealed to me too much. I've never really been bothered by it, so
sure.
It doesn't really appeal to me. Not on the sense that I just don't think it's any good, but just quite. I've never felt the need to sit down in bed or in a sofa playing a game.
Yeah.
So it's never really appealed to me. So that, but it looks like a neat bit of hardware. Comes in 3 versions.
Don't buy the cheapest one.
No, cheapest one's $350, and it comes with a carry case.
Ooh.
It's only got 64 gigs of memory on it,
which will install absolutely nothing.
No. And then the next version up, which is 459, which is SSD memory, 256 gigabytes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the top end one is 569 with half a terabyte of storage space.
Mm-hmm.
But like I say, Skazz, it runs on the AMD Zen 2 2.4 to 3.5 gigahertz processor with and GPU is 8 RDNA 2 CU.
Which is nice because we haven't had any of we haven't had an RDNA 2 chip yet.
No.
Not in an APU at least.
No, and its APU is 4 to 15 watts of power, 16 gigs of RAM, which I thought was actually pretty decent.
Yep.
And it uses M2 modules for memory for storing things, so it should be fairly quick. Game buttons, you've got your normal A, B, X, and Y. You've got your left and right analog sticks. You've got your normal D-pad. You've also got 2 touch pads.
From the Steam controller.
Yep, basically Steam controller. It's basically Steam controller was. You've got 5 left buttons and 5 right buttons. So you've got your normal L1, L2, and L3. But underneath you've got L4 and L5.
Yeah.
I think the Steam controller had as well.
The Steam controller had a button on each side, not 2, but...
Yeah. So, I mean, it looks quite neat. Now, honestly, it's not something that necessarily appealed. It wouldn't necessarily appeal to me.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose my question is, as I always think when these sort of things, like I had the same question when Steam Machines launched, was who is this for? And if you haven't got a Steam library, I'm not sure whether you get this. Although the argument is that games on Steam are generally cheap, a lot cheaper than, say, let's face it, I think they're trying to aim this at the Switch market, aren't they? That's what they're aiming it for.
Sure.
I would say. And games on Steam are a lot cheaper than they tend to be on Switch.
Yeah.
So, in that respect, it probably makes sense. Do you know how it compares to Switch in terms of performance? In terms of, like, look at the stats.
Well, seeing as we don't actually know what the RDNA 2 graphics card or the RDNA 2 APU is actually capable of yet, because it's the first of its kind, technically, unless you consider the ones in the new consoles to be a thing. It's less powerful than an Xbox Series S, but then it is only running at 800p.
It runs at 1280 by 800.
So I'd imagine it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Look, they say it's going to run AAA games. I don't believe it. I mean, there's a video clip of it playing Control. And I'm like, there's no fucking way. Like, there's stutter on it when it's playing Control. There's no way that's playing Control at anything other than 800p low.
Yeah.
And one thing that does scare me about it, because, as I said, you don't know how powerful the APU actually is. You can see, like, is it like teraflop performance or whatever, which isn't great. No. It's not a great metric for overall performance, realistically.
No, it's not. Very poor metric, actually.
It's not. There are too many options on PC gaming, and I can guarantee you none of these games are going to be pre-configured with Steam Deck in mind.
No.
So imagine you go and launch up like Doom 2016 or Doom Eternal, and you're like, well, why doesn't it work? Why is it stuttery? Do you honestly think average Joe is going to pick up a Steam Deck? Sorry, fuck, I've done it again. Pick up a Steam Deck and it's actually going to go, well, I'm going to sit here and fiddle with settings and presets,
No.
resolutions to get it to function. It's not going to be a thing.
No. So unless it's a game that's already got a console port, which means it has controller support.
Well, most games will do, and I mean, it's not the controls that concern me. It's the idea that it's not actually very powerful, and a lot of games don't really, like, for example, Cyberpunk. And I know Cyberpunk isn't a great example, but my laptop shouldn't play that game at anything other than high. Okay? But when you launch Cyberpunk, it goes, oh yeah, you've got a 1440p display. So we're going to set the resolution to 1440p. And then we're going to set it to the ray tracing mode. Because you've got a ray tracing enabled graphics card. So fuck it. Let's just turn on ray tracing. You can't play it at a decent frame rate with ray tracing on, but let's enable that by default. So someone's going to buy a Steam Deck. They're going to launch a game and it's going to run at like 15 FPS. And be like, well, why does this play like shit?
Yeah.
Switch games are tailored, because you're like, how does it compare to the Switch? Switch games are tailored to that hardware. You can't change resolution, texture quality, anti-alias and type and all. You can't do it, but you can on the Steam Deck. And it's not going to set it. It's not going to have a preset for Steam Deck. It's going to go for what it thinks you have. A game is going to load what it thinks you have. So a lot of people are just going to launch these games and they're going to run like shit. That, and it also doesn't help that they're running on Proton.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's running Linux. So how many of these games are actually going to run on this hardware?
That's sort of similar to thoughts. I just don't quite know whose is for. I just can't see. I can't see a non. I just can't see if you're not already a PC, someone who's interested in gaming PC. I can't just see you picking one of these up.
No.
And if you are a PC gamer, I don't know whose gamers have the desire to have play a handheld. I think if you're going to have that, you'd have a Switch.
So I need to throw out there, right? So I own a Switch. I never play it in handheld mode.
You dock it, don't you?
Yes, I'm comfortable as fuck to play it in handheld mode. It's horrible. Yeah. It's an absolutely horrible thing to play in handheld.
You can move the controllers on a Switch.
And it should actually be said that the control pads break very often on the Switch. You can't change the control pads on the Steam Deck. They will suffer with stick drift eventually. What are you going to do? Throw it in the bin? Pull the whole thing apart just so you can change the analog stick on it?
Yeah.
I can guarantee you people aren't going to be using those touch pads. They should, because they were good on the Steam controls.
Yeah, once you got used to them,
they were really they were sound. They were solid. I beat loads of games with the Steam controller. The only reason I'm not using it now is because I've lost the fucking dongle for it.
Yeah.
But I don't. It'll be great for indie games because we don't know what the RDNA 2 chip that they're using is capable of yet. We don't have another real world chip to compare it to. We have maybe the new AMD APU that came out recently, the 5000 something G, but that's running Vega cores, not RDNA 2 cores. So that's last gen graphics tech, and they're already getting choked out by reasonably middle of the road games. So unless RDNA 2 is significantly more powerful, I don't know what you're gonna do with it. Are you gonna use it, as you said, like to stream games from your actual gaming PC? Maybe.
If you could do streaming, so I've had a look. I've had a quick look. I've gone through depth, but I've had a look. I've not seen any mention of streaming.
Well, it will do. It will do because if you run a Steam machine, and you have a Windows Steam box, it'll just say, oh, hey, here's your game. Do you want to stream it? You can stream it off your local machine. They say you can dock it, so you can dock it up to a TV. You can plug in a keyboard and mouse, a control pad, fight sticks, and all that kind of stuff, because they show some fighting games and that on it. But the other thing that, because a chap I know was actually really psyched for, was, this is the thing that we all need to get, because look, you can plug in fight sticks and play fighting games. He's a fighting game player. And I was thinking to myself, well, first off, you're not going to be playing a lot of these because the anti-cheat systems in a lot of these games will just say no because it's Linux.
Yeah.
And that, honestly, he's like, yeah, but, imagine, excuse me, imagine getting one of these, I can replace my gaming laptop. I was like, no, you fucking can't. I was like, your gaming laptop might be 5 years old, but it's still way more powerful than this little fucking thing.
Yeah.
By a country fucking mile, you're shooting yourself in the foot because he's already looking to upgrade his gaming laptop. I was like, so the Steam Deck isn't going to do it for you?
No.
You're not going to be playing VR on it. I mean,
No.
you might do it a push. It'll be terrible. I don't know. You'd really have to temper your expectations as to what you're going to play on it.
It'd be handy to be able to strap it to like your arms, so when you're VR, I want to go to your PC to figure out. You say just like lift your VR, so just tap your arm.
Yeah, for sure.
Like a pit boy.
It's a neat device, but it's not for me.
No, I'm the same. To me, it feels like it's in the same category as Steam machines.
But I liked Steam machines. I had a homemade Steam machine, and they worked great.
Right, homemade, fine. The pre-built ones, though,
they were terrible. At the time, they were terrible.
Yeah. Why would you buy a Steam machine when you can just for the same price you could buy an actual gaming PC?
Yeah. They
were priced wrong anyway. They completely misjudged who they should be pricing them for.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, unless they have, as you say, this sort of thing that's going to appeal to more. Let's face it, if you play games on PC, you have the certain mentality, you're happy to fiddle with as you said earlier, you have the mentality that you're happy to fiddle with settings, fiddle with things to make it work. You're happy to do that. Or prepared to do it, is probably another way to say it.
Yeah.
If you're a person who's going to be appealed to this sort of thing, unless you are already, if it is sort of person who wants to just load a game and play it. So, like you said earlier, you don't want to be feeling, are they going to put things in place to say, right, okay, they'll actually filter out games that you. So you should try. It won't let you play games at all. Like this, just simply can't be spoiled. It hasn't got properly configured for it. Will it filter that out? Will it fill out by?
Well, there are a lot of already pre-made Steam controller configs, because they built all those when the Steam pad came out. So I mean, you could play like Civ 6 on this thing with those touchpads, and that'll work just great. Yeah. Command and Conquer, you could play like RTSs and stuff like that on. I forget what they call like Gal Civ and that. What kind? 4X. You can play 4X games and stuff. You can play all of those just fine on Steam controllers, just great. Same with like MOBAs and stuff like that. Play fine on Steam pads and that. So controls aren't going to be an issue. I honestly do just think it's going to be performance and the actual initial setup of a game, because most games you play have controller support. They have UI controller support, and it will just recognize that pad as an Xbox pad. I can almost guarantee it will just automatically assign it to Xbox buttons. But again, you're going to have a gaming PC. Are you going to sit and play indie titles?
Yeah.
Lower end PC titles on it. You're not going to be playing Cyberpunk. I know they show the control running on it, but I don't imagine it's going to run very well on it. Yeah. You know,
I could sort of see the stream. I could see actually sort of an appeal for the stream that, you know, oh, I've got my big PC, but actually I want to just go sit in the sofa, put my feet up, and I could sort of see that a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And streaming something from your PC, I could see that to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, you might as well get the base version.
Yeah.
I could sort of see that to a certain extent. Because that's what was neat about the Steam Link. That was quite neat for that purpose.
But again, though, to go back to it, it's Linux based. It's all fine and well to fiddle with things you'll know that'll work on Windows.
Yeah. But
this ain't a Windows box.
No.
Who's to say the issues that you have with the game aren't just because they don't run in Proton? The compatibility layer for Windows games on Linux.
Yeah.
You'll go, I'm going to play this game. The hardware will work. Oh, wait, doesn't launch. Why? Because it's not compatible with Proton. Just because it's not running Windows.
Yeah.
There's that. You yourself will happily fiddle with a game to change the resolution, change the texture quality, change draw distance, FOV, all that kind of stuff to make the frame rate smooth, even for games that realistically shouldn't play on the Steam Deck. But then you throw in the fact that it's on Linux, and that there's no guarantee that those games are going to work, or that graphics will glitch because they're not interpreted properly by Vulkan, DXVK. There's fuck all you can do about that other than wait for a patch.
Yeah.
I love Linux gaming, but it ain't fucking easy. It's not always one-click ready. It isn't one-click ready yet. Valve has done a lot of work, but it isn't there yet.
No.
Not for everything. And you see a lot of people who aren't into Linux gaming or Linux at all looking at this thing going, oh, I want that. Are you ready for the problems that come with it? Are you just going to buy it and shit on it when it doesn't do what you want it to?
Yeah. Yeah, I just can't see who the market's for. I mean, Neuromancer actually mentioned he'd like to get one.
Oh, but then he could buy a somewhat decent gaming laptop for about £800.
Yeah.
So the top end Steam Deck is like $6.
Yeah.
So for £200 more,
you can have an actual gaming laptop.
Yeah. Not a top of the line gaming laptop, but still an alright one.
Yeah.
And it'll play more games than the fucking Steam Deck will.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's where we sit with our final point. It's like,
buy a gaming laptop.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're looking at the Steam Deck, buy a gaming laptop.
Look, the concept of it is neat. I like that Valve are doing it. But as you say, who is it for? It's not for me. If I want to play games on the go, I'll buy a gaming laptop and an Xbox pad. People are already jumping up and down, shouting and screaming about current gen NVIDIA graphics cards only being 60 watt. Like, oh, 60 watt 3060, shit. that can't play games. I mean, it kind of can, but it's not great. I have one. So what did you say it was in the fucking Steam Deck? 15?
15 watts max.
No.
Yeah. Let's be honest, you ain't loading Cyberpunk on this game on the
Well,
Steam Deck, are you?
I mean, I don't know what the
It might
wattage
load,
is.
but
I mean, I don't know what the wattage is on the Xbox Series S. I mean, I'd say the Steam Deck is probably, you're maybe looking at performance. And this is like, I'm really pushing it here. Maybe performance of around my old gaming laptop with my Nvidia, with my GTX 1060 mobile in it. But even then, you're fucking, that's really long in the tooth now, that is. That's way long in the tooth. You ain't playing modern AAA games on that. No way.
Xbox Series S goes up to 70 watts.
So our survey says no.
No.
Because that's got a far more powerful graphics card in it. It's got a far more powerful processor in it. And even that's getting choked by games these days. Already. So, yeah. I mean, you could play Hades, maybe on the Steam Deck. Bastion. Loop Hero. Some of the indie games that you and I play, Ram. I mean, you ain't going to play Valheim on it.
No.
No Cyberpunk.
And the other issue, of course, you've got to bear in mind is that most games set up for PC, this issue we actually had with the Steam Link was that games set up for the PC generally are assuming you're sat in front of a relatively largest monitor.
Yeah.
So all your text size and stuff is based on you sat in front of a relatively largest monitor.
Yep.
So you imagine something like Morrowind.
Ugh.
And how reading the text on the screen that big. Imagine trying to do that.
No, thank you. I mean, yeah. I'm looking down at some of the games that I've got installed here. You could play Lost Planet 2, maybe Lost Planet 3, Dark Souls. You ain't going to be playing Nier. You're not going to be playing Neo. You're not going to be playing Phantasy Star. No Valheim. East Origin, you could do that. There's just so many games that I don't think that thing would play. It's going to be more powerful than the 2200G or whatever it was that came out a couple of years ago, and the 30-something 100G. It's going to be more powerful than those GPU-wise, and even to a degree more powerful than the new 5000 series APU. But it's going to be more powerful than those, maybe, but less powerful than most other stuff. So you're even at that low resolution, you're really going to have to temper expectations. And they are saying you can plug it into a telly. Why the fuck are you going to go with that? It's not going to do 1080p gaming.
Yeah, but you plug it into a telly, but you've got to have some other control device to control it at that point.
Yeah, and they discontinued the Steam controller.
Yeah, so like, it's one of the great things that says Switch is you can plug it into your telly, but you can take the Joy-Cons off and use them.
Yeah,
if you know.
I mean, I don't want to shit on it. I don't want to shit on it because it's clever. But I don't know. I think the PC gaming, the requirements now are way too high.
Yeah.
To justify a device that low power.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see once it's sort of like, I mean, it's due to come available in 2022, Q1. No doubt, being a Valve device, that'll probably slip.
2025.
Yeah. So we'll get a better, but hopefully we'll get a better idea of what it can actually do, and seeing it running. It'll be interesting to see what comes out running and see what sort of people pick it up. But I think there'll be a lot of people picking it up, using it for like a few days or for a month or two, and then it ends up in a drawer somewhere.
Yeah, it's like most people bought Steam controls, used them for a couple of days, and then left them alone. Yeah, which is sad because it's a decent control. But the Steam Deck is a very expensive thing to just buy and put on a shelf. I'd like one just to say I own one, but I can't see myself getting any use out of it. No. I'd never use a Switch in handheld mode.
No.
I don't know.
No. We'll see. Very much in the case of we'll see.
It can play Steins Gate. That's a lot of text on an 800p screen, but I mean, you played that on PlayStation Vita. We can do it. Valve, you've nailed it. It's a visual novel machine.
And that moment, Skazz went and pre-ordered one.
There you go. Duh. What do you mean I can play hentai games on it? Bam, I'm there.
Yeah. Well, hey, you can take the bed with you.
There you go. What do you mean I can play Cyberpunk at 240p? 15 FPS like the console, like the last gen consoles.
Yeah. Oh well, there we go. So yeah, we mentioned Steam Deck, guys who want to do it, and yeah, it's a pain in the ass to find any information about it.
Yep. Too early.
Right.
You're pre-ordering it on random, like on no information.
Yeah. Don't order it yet. So, well, on that note, we've been going now 2.5 hours. We probably better finish up. Yeah. So, very much watching. I hope you enjoyed our little revisit to Cyberpunk and what have you, and we certainly have.
You need to change mention of when game nights are happening.
I do. So, game nights are now happening alternate Tuesdays, just to sort of give us some lives, part of our lives back.
Mm-hmm. And because come up to summer holidays too.
And summer holidays as well. So, basically, games night will happen the Tuesday after the podcast live stream.
Yes.
So the live stream. So basically, you'll have a podcast live stream on Saturday, and then the games night live stream on a Tuesday.
Yep.
Which will be at 8:30. Otherwise, it'll be alternate Tuesdays from that point on.
Yeah,
that's an easy way to remember it, Skazz. So thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you on the games like this. So it'll be on this Tuesday at 20:30 GMT +1. Mm-hmm, you can join us on our next live stream, Saturday the 31st of July at 21:30 GMT +1. You can follow us on YouTube at youtube.com/randnerds, twitch.tv/randnerds. You can visit our website, randnerds.co.uk. And you can watch our individual channels and streaming. You've got me, twitch.tv/SufferGram.
When Ram actually streams.
I streamed today for 4 hours.
Only because I whined at you. Oh, it was fucking hilarious. Failed stealth was brilliant.
What do you mean by I say, Ram, can you stream for me? Yes, certainly.
You should have done it anyway.
Well, people might talk to me.
Well, that is quite scary, isn't it?
I'm not. I'm a PC gamer. I'm not social.
Yeah. No, I understand that.
Yeah. See, he understands. Yeah. Do you like my driving?
That was yeah, on that bike in your underpants. I can't believe you changed your underpants. I was so disappointed. You changed your knickers. Put them back on, goddammit.
Higher armor. Once I can upgrade the knickers back to that armor level, then I will go back to them.
You better do.
I found something that was 10 points armor higher than them. I had to change them.
I really hope the most powerful armor in this game is like a bra and a thong. That would be great.
It does appear to be following, MMO logic when it comes to
Korean MMO logic.
Yeah, particularly only for female characters, but the more better it is, the more skimpier it is.
It's the best way.
Well, think about it, right? It makes perfectly logical sense, right? Mm-hmm, so armor's on the thing you're getting hit, right? So if there's less armor, it's going to be harder to hit that armor.
Yeah.
Therefore, offers you more protection.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's more concentrated.
Exactly.
Let's be fair. If you're looking at a lassie, if you're a straight bloke like myself, and you see a lassie running around in a bikini and yeah, no way am I going to be able to fucking hit the target. I'm going to be like, what the fuck is going on there? And if you're a young lass and you see some big muscly bloke walking along, you're like, oh, God, run!
Are you saying that most armor is actually the stats are more based on the ability to evade rather than, or just generally distracted?
Yeah, that's how that works. That's why the armor value is so high. You're like, what the fuck? Look, seriously, if I see a big muscular guy running at me in like a fucking thong, I'm gonna be like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm not even gonna be able to pull the trigger at that point. I'm just like, ah! And then I'm dead. So they win.
Yeah. Well, you see, that was my tactic. Everyone sees me. They go, "What the fuck is going on?" They hide behind what they think is a solid object, and then find out that I've got a precision rifle, and they get their headshot off anyway.
No, mate. They hide behind what they think is a solid object. It is most definitely a solid object, but it's you.
like beefcakes.
It's like, oh yeah. It's like, no, Ram, don't do it, mate. That's why they kept. That's why they kept on spotting you, mate. That's the thing. They're like, what the fuck is that? Big burly bloke with his wang hanging out, running across the fucking. Like, oh, blimey, look at that arse.
I got the exact reference just from the accent. Oh, anyway, if anybody's watching, we'll see you in a fortnight.
Take it easy, guys.